And now, live from the Man Cave, Studio B, deep in the heart of constitutional Livingston County, Michigan, this is a Sunday night conversation with Shane Trejo and Dennis Marburger. With your ever-present earwig, the real Tim Allen behind the scenes. Yours truly, Larry Parsons. This is My Brain. Now your host, my favorite pain in the ass, Jeremy Scott Gibbs.
For future production purposes, you remember I used to have you set a timer and said you had 58 fucking cents. Oh, sorry, this is not Tuesday.
Sorry,
first F-bomb.
I have an F-bomb for you, sir.
Yes.
Drop that for me, please. Thank you.
There it is.
I'll have to edit that out in post.
There we go.
All right, coming to the table, gentlemen. Welcome to the show.
Yes, and that was an express version, wasn't it? I think it was the clapping that threw me off.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And check the copy. Why am I hearing like another
what? We got an extra. Well, lapels are open.
Yeah, but I hear
Three.
I'm hearing another mic. Like we got one of the camera mics on.
3's dead. There's no levels on 3, so somebody needs to either turn on their mic or.
Well, 3 shouldn't. Is yours on? He's on 3.
We got the tower.
There you go. Just
How
right
about
on
now?
the top. Hit that.
Do you hear it
switch.
now?
I'm still hearing a huge echo, dude. Maybe it could be
Testing.
I don't know.
1, 2, 3.
I'll see how everybody's sounding out. How they're. Hey, how we sound out there in
Testing.
How about now?
TV land?
You have an echo now?
I don't know.
1, 2, 3.
I'll see how everybody's sounding out. Yeah, that's an echo right there.
It's definitely an
I'm
echo.
monitoring the show. Hey, who's in chat?
I'm looking. I don't see anybody in chat yet. We're watching Sunday Night Football instead of the coolest show in Livingston County.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Coolest show in Livingston County, shot from a man cave.
Exactly. Well, welcome to the show. Welcome back, Shane, frequent collaborator here. I left out an R in the official paper here. Dennis pointed it out to me. I feel like a jerk now.
Did I get the thumbnail right?
You got the thumbnail right. I got the copy on the show correct. And I just, when I was printing up my thing, look, Dennis, look right there.
Well done, sir.
See, I just on the official page, I was whatever. I suck. It is what it is. Welcome, guys.
Happy to be here.
Yeah.
Trump won, and the whole world is saved.
Well, we're moving onward and upward. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah.
And don't forget that when the clock strikes 9:47 in Michigan, we also call that 13-10, and it's the score of the Michigan-Ohio State game. So
13-10.
Nice. Yeah, I like the whole planting the flag and then somebody ripping the flag
and Jason Avant saving it.
yeah, that was quite the angry melee there.
I missed the game this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed it. I was with my mother.
And I looked away for just a little while,
Yeah.
and then saw them grabbing the flag and thought, "What a bunch of a-holes!" Not realizing that the Michigan player had brought out the big flag and was staking it in the middle of their field. I'm like, "Well, maybe you."
Well, they were over here, see, like
Yeah.
far away singing, and they turned around and started a physical altercation, assault.
I heard there was pepper spray involved.
Yes.
Yeah,
just,
pepper
yes.
spray too.
just a basic.
The police had
The
to
bottom-
do a pepper spray.
Bottom line is the Buckeye fans and the Buckeyes, they violated the non-aggression principle that day.
Once again, and they were defeated by the amazing blue defenders of Western
True.
civilization.
True.
And moments ago, apparently, Kirk Herbstreit's son just committed to play quarterback for Michigan.
Oh, nice. Now, didn't they?
Badass.
That ended the bowl championship. They can still be bowl eligible, but they're not going to the championship.
No, they are in the champion. Ohio State's in the championship series.
Are they still?
Yep.
Yeah, they're one of the top 12, so they're in there. Yeah.
They
Okay.
lowered the standards.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. And Michigan's going to have some kind of bowl.
They'll be
game.
at a
That'll
bowl,
be,
yeah.
That'll be the.
I saw who it was.
What are knockoff?
They'll be in like the 1-800-Flowers Motor City Bowl.
I was going to say, what are knockoff Doritos? What are this called? Like.
It's actually the ReliaQuest Bowl this year in Tampa, but Detroit would have been cool. We could all
They'll be at the RC Cola Bowl.
RC Cola. That sounds good.
a rematch with Alabama.
Yeah. I think the
Are they playing
knockoff
Alabama?
Dorito
Oh,
Bowl
wow.
would be great.
Well, there's a Detroit Bowl going on. There's actually in Ford Field, but it's 2 other teams. It's a Pac-10 is actual local. So there's for a local game to go to for a
somebody says
it's a fun one because they basically give the tickets away. It's a fun time. I've been to it a few years.
Yeah, it's a good one. Last year was the Golden Gophers who won. I can't remember who was in it this year. So
Central Michigan's been a few times in the Maroon and Gold. The Chippewas won a couple of them.
I had a couple buddies in the past that went to CMU. All right, let's do this.
We have to disclaim again. I swear I thought I did this once today.
We did it once today because we had what? Oh, I switched the wrong button.
That's okay. I didn't push it.
Retarded.
This is My Brain Notice. This podcast is mostly raw and unfiltered and completely politically incorrect. I apologize for the first F-bomb on the show. I forgot it was a Sunday, not a Tuesday. We say Merry Christmas and the Pledge of Allegiance. All allegiance. We'll have to look up what that word means. Especially the part about one nation under God.
Mm-hmm.
We thank our troops for their service. Thank you, everyone out there who
thank you. And here at the table, thanks, Larry. Dennis, did you serve or no?
Dennis,
okay, so we just got Larry at the table tonight.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes.
And those of you in the audience out there. Continue.
Yep. We only recognize 2 genders.
Dangle, no dangle.
Those would be them. As adults, we actually enjoy adult beverages. This evening, who's actually?
It's probably just me.
Just you.
Me officially.
I cracked a healing mead, an apple mead. So I have that over here. So we cuss. We do not curse nor swear.
What the?
As I mentioned at the top of the show. Sorry for the F-bomb on a Sunday. We love Jesus, our Lord and Savior, but hate religion, the fake part, not the one about taking care of orphans and widows. And religious hypocrisis. Is that how you say that?
Hypocrisis.
Hypocrites. If any of this offends you, and this is the first time you've ever watched this show, you're going through the VODs, and this is the first time you've ever heard this, give us a couple hours. We grow on you, but then you can leave.
Right. I have a sign downstairs that says, if I haven't offended you yet, just wait around. I'll get to you.
Yep, get you. Take your turn.
I will take your turn.
The disclaimer.
Does anybody else want to do it? I think we're good on disclaimers. Let's get right into the
Something that can kind of be.
Let's talk.
Grab the bull by the horns.
Grab the bull by the horns or the junk,
just
whatever you want to do. Yeah, we're gonna do it. All right. Shane sent me this whole list.
I sent you a lot of shit.
Oh, now he's dropping. He's cussing on the show. Cussing on the show. All right. What do you want to start, buddy? I got the list here. I mean, I went in order of the list you sent me.
Let's go with Mike Rogers' record.
Did you want to start with that scorecard?
Yeah, let's see the scorecard.
All right, let's do that.
So we recently had we lost a very narrow race for U.S. Senate, non-incumbent race because Debbie Stabenow was retiring.
Debbie, stab me now.
Stab me now, if you will. So it was it ended up being a very close race between Alyssa Slotkin and the Democrat, obviously, and Representative Mike Rogers, the Republican.
Did you say her name right?
So
did you say that? Yeah, we're clarifying because with the whole Kamala.
I don't think you said her name right.
We're making sure you said the name correctly when you
Kamala?
said Alyssa Slotkin. I'm going to check with Larry.
We
got to clear it with legal before we get too far in to make sure. Illicit Slutkin. Illicit Slutkin. I think that's right. Get your microphone on.
It's on. It's just not lined up right.
It literally is not on the clip.
Yeah.
Continue, Shane. I'm sorry to interrupt. We just have to check with legal now that Larry has pissed off enough people.
Sorry to interrupt your segment. Continue.
So if this is I don't know if you can see it on there, but the scorecard, congressional scorecard based on the Constitution from the Freedom Index, had Mike Rogers at a lifetime score of 51%. So
it's a little blurry, but yeah.
51% on the conservative issues that matter most to constitutionalist Republicans. That's not a very good record. He was anointed. He was in Florida, living in Florida. Some DC advisor types, they drafted him. They got him, off the sidelines, dragged him back to Michigan, anointed him as the U.S. Senate candidate. Did a lobbying campaign to convince Trump to endorse him. Tragically, Trump did. So there really wasn't a primary. It was decided for us. And one of the congressmen with the worst records of any Republican in recent memory was our Senate candidate. But he did surprisingly well. We'll pull up the okay, there we go. Once Jeremy's done fiddling,
We weren't on camera. Shut up.
you were on the camera. Oh, never mind. A lot of under the table sort of actions going on here.
I thought, look at the monitor, Trejo.
So Alyssa Slotkin ended up getting 2,708,212 votes. You can pull this up. Yeah, it's in another message. Yeah.
All right, I'll bounce right to these. You guys are seeing behind the scenes how we do this. Is that one at the top?
Toward the top, yeah. So
that was at the top.
This is how we do it.
I hate that song. I'm not doing it. I started to do it, and I wanted to beat myself now for having attempted it.
There it is, right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, you see there. So 2,708,000 votes to 2,687,000 votes, while the Libertarian Party candidate got 56,750 votes. So as you can see there, the Libertarian, if Mike Slotkin had earned those Libertarian votes, he would be the next. He would have been the senator. Or and it's an even bigger margin when you look at the amount of people who voted for Trump and then chose not to vote for Mike Rogers. So
that was the amazing thing to me.
Yeah, I would be one of them.
So there's a lot of people who did that. A lot of principled Republicans. I call them conscientious Republicans, the conscience of the Republican Party. There's always going to be a pressure to, let's just accept the shitty candidate. Let's accept the rhino, the neocon. There's an R next to his name. So let's go and start rallying for Mike Rogers, hoping he gets in there, hoping he gets elected. And for the record, I did hold my nose. I voted straight ticket for every Republican.
Yep.
Even though I hate Mike Rogers, think he was the worst possible candidate.
Okay, let me ask you a softball real quick, because I think I know you know this one. What do you think happens now that we get another dose of the kin of sluts? What's going to happen?
She's going to be entrenched, and she'll be in there for a long time. So this was a huge missed opportunity. All you needed, you didn't need a great candidate. All you needed was a candidate who didn't offend a core constituency within the Republican Party. You look at independent Republicans, Tea Party Republicans, libertarian-leaning Republicans. They all couldn't stand Mike Rogers. They hated him for his record. Look at all of the ads that came out against Rogers. There were some bullshit ones like about abortion or whatever, but there were ones that painted him as an out-of-touch lobbyist who serves the corporate interests that he was put into the U.S. Congress to try to regulate and be a watchdog for.
100%.
That is 100% accurate. And Slotkin is a CIA insider. She's a crony. Yeah. But in comparison between the two candidates, who was more of the insider? Who was more of the crony? It was Mike Rogers. So Rogers was such a uniquely terrible candidate that he allowed Slotkin to actually run as an outsider in comparison to Mike Rogers' record. So and I'll let Dennis talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of Mike Rogers' record in a second. But my overall point is, and we'll pull up my op-ed in a minute, about being the conscience of the Republican Party. That we, those of us, we may not be the core constituency, but if we have veto power over candidates now, up a little bit.
What's above it?
So the answer to the question I was expecting was, wouldn't there be a backlash? Isn't there going to be a Republican backlash if we end up getting another, what's the term? It's another 2 or 4 for Slotkin?
It's going to be 6 years of Slotkin. And as much as I would like to say that, it'll be 6 years of Slotkin, everyone will be pissed. She'll probably be entrenched. She'll probably be tough to get rid of unless she decides to run, unless she's appointed to an administration or decides to run for president or something like that. She's going to be tough to beat.
Could we talk Trump into appointing her to a lower cabinet position and then immediately firing her for being an idiot?
I don't think she would accept that.
Yeah, I don't think it would.
I think she would see that coming. But
you're fired.
And the big point of this article here, I wrote it on rightmichigan.com, is you cannot take the votes of the conscientious conservatives for granted. They will not give you their vote for any turd that's on the ballot. They will flush that turd unless their vote is earned. And it's, you don't have to put up Ron Paul for Senate or Ron Paul for every position, but you have to at least put up someone with some substance, someone who is at least not horrendously bad. Shoving this guy down our throats. In the primary, it was kind of a dismal primary, to be honest, but I think an even mediocre candidate if the money hadn't, gotten behind Rogers and made him be the heir apparent and gave us no choice. I think even a mediocre candidate could have, at the very least, not alienated those tens of thousands of voters.
I tell you what,
and ridden the Trump wave in there. But we blew it because we listened to the big money. The establishment led us astray again, and Mike Rogers blew it. And if the Republicans don't learn the right lesson, they put up another turd like this, they'll blow it again, whether it's in the governor's race or any other statewide race, because the conscientious Republicans will not go along with the dog and pony show. They've had enough.
I tell you what, we had Michael Hoover on here, and he was one of the first ones to declare, first ones to get a campaign going. I had him on the show 3 different times. Love him, love his wife.
Love his story.
His story is awesome. He was pounding the pavement, hitting every convention he could get. If they would, and he had to back out because of lack of funds. If they would have thrown good money behind him, he was one of the most solid business owner, family man. His story was phenomenal, and he just wanted to serve and help out.
And no baggage. You know what I mean?
No baggage.
He's an outsider.
Yeah.
We could have painted Slotkin as an insider.
Dude.
And the NSRC is supposed to come in and help whatever candidate that's on the ballot. But you know what? They gave tens of millions of dollars to Mike Rogers. Guess how much they gave Kerry Lake in Arizona? Zero. $0.
I thought it was 50 cents, but
they may have given her, $1.25, but no, I don't know. It's despicable what they do. But this is what's changed is that there's more Republicans who are thinking, who are not willing to go with the flow anymore.
Right.
They've been backstabbed so often. Trump, and Trump made overtures to libertarians. He spoke at the Libertarian National Convention. He embraced Bitcoin policies that were incredibly amenable to what libertarians wanted. He knew that we have to win these people at the margins because I'm going to be winning potentially by tens of thousands of votes in these battleground states.
Right.
So if I can get the libertarians, I can get the independents to come out just 100,000 more in each of these states by appealing to them on issues that they matter.
The Amish came out in droves to vote in Pennsylvania. That's what they say, and is really what tipped over Pennsylvania. Was the Amish coming out.
So appealing to these voters on the margins is how Republicans are going to win, because there's going to be a cluster of people who are going to vote Democrat no matter what, a cluster of people who are going to vote Republican, but then there's a lot of independents who are disaffected, a lot of more libertarians than ever before, and those people, the hundreds of thousands of people that vote represents, them coming aboard to the Republican candidate is the only way that we can win in purple states like Michigan. So people have to realize that, and they might be pissed, they might be butthurt. A lot of people are blaming me and Adam D'Angeli and other people.
I blame you.
Yeah, blaming me for Mike Rogers losing because we tried to say, hey, this is going to be a disaster. There's no way he can win. He's got a terrible record in the primary. We hit him hard in the primary. I make no reservations about that. And if it's true that I sabotaged him, well, if we get a candidate as bad as this happen again, if we don't learn our lesson, I'm going to come back even harder against him in the primary and
that's the amazing
try to make
thing.
So it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing, and I want to get to Dennis's analysis here. Do we want to read into the copy before we?
Was that
before we get Dennis's analysis? Do we want to read any?
Oh no, I kind of summarized it while I was talking.
But I wanted to point out that it's amazing to me how much you had this turnout for Trump here in Michigan, taking Michigan, and yet it was not resounding, but I mean enough not voting for Rogers. And some people say that it was because of this or because of that. No, there were enough conscientious people that said, I would rather go with the devil that is obvious and you pretty much know where she stands than go with the guy that will stab us in the back at the worst possible time, which his record that you're going to go over in a second here, Dennis, demonstrates. His record demonstrates that if he's 50% or less with us on these issues, I'd rather have Slotkin, because Slotkin's going to be, at least we know it's like, do you vote for a horrible rhino Republican or AOC? Well, I know that idiot exactly where she stands. If I don't know if the rhino is going to stab us in the back on a most important bill or vote that we need them to stand with us on. And I think people are getting that sentiment or that dynamic. I don't know. Dennis, you tell me.
Well, I think there's a lot to that, Jeremy, I'd also like to add another layer to this in terms of in what Shane was talking about regarding the voters.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, you may recall that in the post-October 7th events of last year and going into this year,
Mm-hmm.
There are many aspects to this, as with many historical events, that haven't been fully disclosed in a way that's in the major media where everybody sees all of them. But a lot of questions have been raised about just what exactly happened, what was happening before that, and what's happened since then.
Mm-hmm.
And the
referring to the October 7th attack,
right, by Hamas. But how'd that even happen? I mean, it's a very controversial topic. Except one thing everyone would agree on: well, you're not getting across that borderline. There's no. Well, how they just get across like that? And why was there just this one group of apparently female soldiers that were supposed to be doing something by themselves?
Nobody acknowledges the prime minister was about to be indicted by his own government.
Exactly. So the prime minister, Bibi the Butcher, was in horrible legal trouble.
After he poisoned all of his people with the shots and said they were all guinea pigs. And look, we tested on our population. It's all good.
So and then there's what's been happening since, both in terms of the statements by Israeli leadership, which have been frankly genocidal and reached that standard, and also the actions of what they've done, totally destroying that whole area, a large death toll, but also now there's 2 million people. There's no way they can live there. Their habitat has been destroyed, and that comes under those definitions. Anyway,
No place to park.
one of the things that happened here locally, and in other areas, but was also these protest rallies and people talking about Genocide Joe. Remember that became quite a deal.
Yep.
Now you would think maybe that the Republican Party would say, we've got like in Michigan, we have a lot of Americans who really object to this, and some of them have family members or might feel some kinship either due to ethnic or religious ties to some people back there. Maybe we should at least reach out to them and talk, right? And say, well, maybe we have, we don't like Joe Biden either. Maybe we should talk about this. And there was none of that.
Mm-hmm.
And even at the Republican National Convention, which we saw, which was labeled America First.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure about that. Frankly, there was one night where it clearly was was not America First. It was a foreign country first.
Right.
And yet all these people
Really, which one?
that object strenuously to what the Israeli state was doing, and the Republican Party was ignoring them and saying we're going to out Joe Biden on this. Even though, by the way, Joe Biden's record, despite what you heard from many Republican candidates, and Glenn Greenwald, among others, have talked about this, no one has supported the state of Israel more resolutely than Joe Biden. No one has given them more money, more military support.
True.
Oh, by the way, I have to add this. So I asked one of the candidates running against Mike Rogers in the primary this question. If he were to be elected senator, would he support enforcement of U.S. law through the Symington and Glenn amendments? Well, what are those?
What are those?
Many people ask yes, as our friendly producer, the real Tim Allen, just asked. So the Symington and Glenn amendments were passed in the 70s, and they grew out of a concern that President Kennedy actually had before he was assassinated, and other American officials did as well. Apparently, Richard Nixon, Lyndon Johnson, maybe not so much, what we can glean. But these amendments basically said if a country has a nuclear program of any type, has not signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, they are ineligible to receive any U.S. financial or military support unless
They're Israel.
It's Israel.
Unless there's a waiver signed by the President of the United States that says, I'm aware of this,
Okay.
and go ahead and give them the aid.
Right.
Now, there are several countries that actually meet most of these criteria.
Mm-hmm.
I think Pakistan and India are two, and they may not be the only ones, but just several. But they've received the waivers, and they have received U.S. Financial aid and military support.
Right.
And not saying that it's good, but that's American law.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of Israel, they've never received one of these waivers. And in fact, there is information and evidence that one of the first things that happens when a new president is elected, he is told by the Israeli state, you will not sign that waiver. Now, it's odd in a way because it's kind of an open secret. In other words, it's not like...
Right. Everyone knows Israelis have nuclear...
Well, they have nuclear weapons, right? They have maybe
Yes.
hundreds of them, right? And they have
Right.
some undetectable so why go through the subterfuge? But there must be some. But anyway, they haven't. And so people like, I think Grant Smith is one, and then Ben Swan. Some people know about Ben Swan. He does a lot of great work. He just did some back last year during the summertime. He's talking about this. Well, according to the Symington and Glenn amendments, this nuclear ambiguity policy of saying we're not saying, but we're not signing the waiver, makes this illegal. And apparently, according to I think Ben Swan's analysis, roughly $240 billion has been sent illegally to the state of Israel. And then you say, well, that creates something else, of course, known as moral hazard. Because then you say, well, gee, I wonder if there are some things that maybe would have led them to be less militaristic against the Palestinian people. Say, well, let's try to find a fairer way to work this thing out. So this had very real life consequences for a very large number of people, including the American people, who apparently don't have enough money to help the good folks of Western North Carolina or East Palestine, Ohio, or these other areas that we can think of, right?
Right. No, they got Dennis. They got $750 in North Carolina,
Or a tenth, maybe.
but they got to pay it back. So I mean, that's fair.
Yeah, that's Bidenomics for you.
We send
They got to pay it back.
Yeah.
240, 50 billion to.
So there's some other. I mean, obviously the Ukraine situation has some similarities to this, but this situation with this other deal is really striking. Anyway, getting back to the point about Mike Rogers and the others, and President Trump. While you would have looked at it and said, boy, there's a lot of things he's done and said about the Middle East that would not make a person of many people very happy, he at least did something that was notable.
Mhm.
Side note, gentlemen, do you see how Dennis, our guest here, is doing the
He
Trump
went-
weave? How
I
he's
love
weaving, he's doing the weave.
You heard about the weave?
No,
Weave.
Oh,
we'll
your
talk about-
conversational style. You're weaving your
doing a
topics
phenomenal
together.
job.
It's an amazing Trump.
Trump
weave.
talked about he had finally had to make people realize that
Yeah.
he's like, I'll get back to where we were. I'm weaving it through
Oh,
a whole
okay.
story. You're
Yeah.
doing
You
phenomenal.
do a
Okay,
Trump
good.
weave very
All
nicely.
all right, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
So, but what he did was he said, you know what, I'm going to go to Michigan, go to Dearborn, you know, that community, what many of us have been to. So a lot of good Americans are there, but which has been subjected to outrageously horrible rhetoric by Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas and other despicable
Right.
government officials. He went to Dearborn and he went to Hamtramck. And so he met with the people. I want you, I'm here. At least he's making a presence saying, I'm listening to you. Now, interestingly, Kamala didn't do that.
Right.
And the Democrats, so you say, well, the Democrats in their party, I mean, look how they dealt with this thing.
Mhm.
They were quite upset about it. And so just as in neither convention did you have anybody who said, well, I've got family back there in Palestine. And by the way, one of Mike Rogers' primary opponents, Congressman Justin Amash, had family. It still does. It lives in Palestine.
Mhm.
He posted this on Twitter X, which would probably be Facebook too. But when the Israelis bombed St. Periphorus Church, which may have been the oldest or one of the very oldest still operating churches in the world, they killed two of his cousins, two young ladies.
Mhm.
But anyway, getting back to this other thing, Kamala did not go to meet with these people. Donald Trump showed up and said, I'm going to listen and hear what you have to say. I'm going to, okay.
Right.
And the one fellow in Dearborn, I saw this, he had a plaque that he gave to President Trump. And President Trump had written them a letter.
Okay.
And this fellow said, President Trump, we appreciate what you did. And, you mentioned the horrible things happening now to Lebanon, that's being aggressed upon by the Israeli state in horrible ways,
Mhm.
with U.S. support, which is, all, of course, I mentioned before, is illegal as well as immoral.
Right.
But it's amazing. But, we did talk about Palestine, too. And Trump kind of sort of nodded his head. You could tell he acknowledged that he heard some words that were said to him that he's not hearing from very many people. This guy said, but President Trump, we really appreciate your being here. And so they had several events, and one where President Trump was there. You could hear our friend Rolla Mackey, who's the outreach vice chair for the Michigan Republican Party, say Dearborn is Trump country, and President Trump picked up her son and that sort of thing. And then he had gone to Hamtramck. So President Trump had done all this and said, you know what? Let me hear what your concerns are, and I'm going to be as fair as I can about it. I think that's basically what he was trying to convey to them. Okay.
Right.
My understanding is that Mike Rogers went and met with a group called Arab American Conservatives. And in fact, we just heard at the 11th District meeting, Vance Patrick, who's the chair of the Oakland County Republican Party, mentioned, oh, yes, he talked to the, because they're business owners and all that. We didn't get this, but I would have said to Vance, you're right. That, yes, they're concerned about those business type issues and making sure that we have a better and freer economy. But there's something else that President Trump did. Again, he reached out to them about the other situation overseas.
Mhm.
And I don't think Vance referenced that, but I think that was really important. When Mike Rogers went and met with these people, I've been told, I wasn't there, so this is not an eyewitness account, but I've heard that apparently he went there, and I've seen where he's made comments that would support this, that he told them, as far as he was concerned, there was no red line on U.S. Military, financial, or other support for the state of Israel, no matter what they did. And apparently the meeting got contentious,
Yeah.
awkward.
Yep.
And so even, and it's interesting, a number of people around the world, including the great George Galloway. If you know who he is, George Galloway is an English parliamentarian and speaker. He had come here once. He was accused of violating the oil for food program with Iraq. They were trying to paint him as a
Right.
Okay. So you see the speech he gives to the Senate committee led by Senator Norm Coleman, a Republican senator from Minnesota. And Galloway is one of the great speakers of our age.
Mhm.
And he lays the truth out there and just demolishes this whole shibboleth, this whole myth that he was involved. I have nothing to do with any oil trading anywhere, and nothing to do with okay. So, and then you can compare that to Bibi the Butcher, Bibi Netanyahu, going to Congress and what he said previous to the second Iraq War, where he lied through his teeth,
Right.
and made personal guarantees.
Mm-hmm.
Never been held account for those guarantees, despite all the lives that have been lost, all the destruction. But our government's still in there doing all this sort of thing. But so, and as we see with the horrible things that have happened in Syria now, but anyway, and in Palestine and in Lebanon and other places. But so I continue to weave here. The other point is that I think Mike Rogers lost some support that went to Trump because of what he said and what he didn't say to our fellow Michiganians in Dearborn and Hamtramck and some other areas.
Yeah.
Some of whom may not be libertarians. I don't know that they're libertarians, but they looked and said, we'll vote for Trump because we think at least with Trump, we got a shot at maybe this is going to work out. Oh, and the part about Galloway, why this was relevant. George Galloway and others said, you know what? Okay, we see what we think might happen with a new Trump administration. We saw what happened the last time. We weren't happy about that, but it wasn't like what Biden and Harris are doing.
Yep.
Right.
This is the worst. And you cannot reward
Failure.
Biden and Harris, not just failure.
Yeah.
Outright genocide, complicity in
100%.
genocide.
100%.
I mean, the moral turpitude on so many levels. This is just one of them, but this is maybe one of the most egregious things you could see. And so George Galloway said, and he probably said he's a man. Look, he just said, you know what? You can't reward that. So he said, I think the people in America should vote for Trump, and then let's see where it goes from there. But that's what I think you should do. So this would probably happen in a number of states. But what Mike Rogers had done, evidently, and I think this is consistent with things I've heard him say, so I believe this was his position on the topic, was to tell these people, I really don't give a damn how you feel about this, and your cares and your concerns don't matter to me one whit. So they said, okay, well, so there's some votes, and you can look at these communities, votes that went to President Trump that didn't go to Mike Rogers.
Right.
Mike Rogers never said, I was wrong about Iraq. I was wrong about the Patriot Act. I was wrong about NSA spying. He never showed 1 ounce of contrition for any of his previous policies. He never changed a bit. It was just, he went from hating on Trump and pissing on Trump publicly for his own, benefit. And I might run for president against Trump. Trump's never going to be president, to, oh, now I love Trump. But I have all the same bullshit policies that I've always supported. And the public, they're sick of career politicians.
Mhm.
They're sick of obvious liars. They're sick of, these slick talking assholes. So the public said, no, Mike Rogers, you're not going to win. You're not going to ride Trump's coattails on there. You're not a Trump Republican. You don't represent what this party stands for anymore. And, in many ways, we're better off that he lost.
Well, that's great. Too bad. I want to ask something. Sorry, Jeremy. But
Yeah.
Trump made some brilliant observations there, and including things that Larry and I were talking about just before we got on the air here,
Yes.
which is that one of the infamous things that Mike Rogers said was that, well, if you don't know that we're surveilling you or violating your privacy, how can we be violating your privacy?
Yeah.
Despicable.
Oh.
Yeah, that's like saying, well, if you don't know that I'm raping your daughter, I'm not raping your daughter.
Exactly.
It's like unbelievable. I mean, I talk to people. I was blue in the face, because I'm sure everybody here knows how I feel about Alyssa Slatkin.
Yeah.
She's the worst representative in the history of this county. And she's going to go on and be one of the worst senators in the history of the state. And on top of it, she's a stinking groomer. She's for all this boys and girls bathrooms, locker room showers, boys and girls sports. Now, I have a ton of friends that told me point blank, I'm not voting for Mike Rogers. Period. He lost by 18,000 votes. I am confident that there are more than 18,000 Republicans in this state that skipped over that section. They either voted for, they either voted for Slotkin or they didn't vote in that race at all.
Mhm.
And here's how I define conscientious Republican.
Right.
Tea Party style Republicans who
Yes.
are hard right conservatives, but they just had it with the phonies.
Yes.
Independent minded Republicans who, they know that the Democrats are crazy. They're not crazy about the Republicans. They're not going to vote for a Republican unless they're inspired. And
Yes.
then libertarian minded Republicans who have a strong set of principles. And if a Republican candidate abides by them, probably 70% or so, they'll vote for him. If not, they'll vote for Libertarian or Constitution Party, third party, or stay home.
Right. And we saw 150,000 votes going to the third party candidates, I think.
Yep. So that block of voters is definitely in the hundreds of thousands.
Uh-huh.
That is going to be what separates the Republicans who win from the Republicans who lose. If they can get that block of people voting for them, they're going to carry the hardcores anyway, but that's going to be the buffer that gets them across the finish line in this purple state that is, been trending blue, but now we have some momentum now going back, pushing back more toward the right. We have to keep it in mind in 2026. We have to put up better candidates. We have to put up candidates who stand strong by principle, can raise money and present themselves as professional. It's not easy to find people who check all those boxes, but the bottom line is you can't go with someone as bad as Mike Rogers and expect to win any statewide election here in Michigan.
The number one argument I heard is entrenched CIA agent against entrenched FBI agent.
Yeah, deep state on deep state.
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
And that's what
Spy
we were
versus spy.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
that's what we were stuck with.
Mhm.
That's what we were stuck with, and a lot of the Republican-based people that I talked to, there were several Republicans they wouldn't vote for.
Right.
Mhm.
And isn't it amazing? He's one of the only ones. Correct me if I'm wrong, Shane. I didn't dive deep into him during the campaign, but he never came out and apologized for being a never Trumper and opposing Trump.
Never.
But you look at J.D. Vance. He fielded multiple questions on why he was against Trump, and he basically came down and said, "Look, he wasn't proven.
He proved me wrong."
That's
what he
I was
heard him
wrong.
say.
I was mistaken.
He wasn't.
Yep.
He was.
I heard him say that.
He said he didn't. I didn't know him. He wasn't a proven commodity. The same thing with, or a similar thing with RFK Jr. RFK Jr. is a Democrat. He comes from the Democrat. When the Democrats rejected him, he ran independent. When he realized the independent, he threw his weight behind. They're like, "Well, how do you like?" He goes, "I've always liked Trump. We just disagree on issues." But he said, "I realized with him being a part of what he's doing, we can make America healthy again, and I'm all on board with that." And so you look at these dynamics of this. Mike Rogers never came out and disavowed his own stance on that, or not disavowed it,
on anything.
but never came out and explained to people. And we're now in an age where we're more and more, I think we're in, without the violence, which they've tried to provoke and put, TV shows on Netflix and stuff like that, they would like a open conflict, another revolution. But I think we're in a renaissance or a revolution in itself, from the standpoint of the minds, as I think Jefferson said, the brush fire in the minds of men is we're getting people to start thinking. And I believe that's what we saw huge in this Mike Rogers campaign versus Trump took the state.
Right.
Rogers couldn't take the state.
No.
That is not just Democrats crossing the line and voting
And we
for
had
Trump.
this conversation before the election, and I told you what my fears were.
Right.
In that race.
Right.
Because this guy comes back from Florida. I mean, he's from here. He was born and raised right here.
Yeah.
Which Slotkin's always been from New York.
Slotkin's never been from here. So, I mean, for 2 years, she lived at her grandparents' farm.
Yeah, I got an
in
uncle who lives in
Holly,
Colorado.
And then she went to
Cranbrook.
She went to Cranbrook for her $35,000 a year education, and then who knows where she went after that. She's never been from here. She's a carpetbagger, big time. She doesn't represent us at all. She's terrible. She votes to the left of AOC.
She's horrible.
And then she looks people in the eyes and tells them to their face, "I'm a moderate."
Yeah. Dennis, what are you going to say?
Well, actually, this is fascinating stuff, and a couple of points. One is, I think I have a solution for part of this, as Shane was saying, this is what the conscientious people should be doing. Conscientious Republicans, frankly Democrats too, but conscientious Republicans or libertarians or anybody should be doing this sort of thing. and it ties into some of the other topics. But we've already talked about Palestine and Israel and all that. And I see, we got Syria coming up here.
Mhm.
George Washington, in his farewell address, urged that we have no entangling,
No foreign entanglements. Yeah.
alliances. He had several reasons why he didn't want us to do that.
Right.
It would hurt us strategically.
Yep.
It would get us involved in unnecessary fighting, and it would lead to internal divisions within the country. When somebody said, "Hey, we really shouldn't have any of these entangling alliances with these other countries because that's their cause," but there are many people here who don't agree with it, or family might be harmed by it. But America's only cause should be to protect America. The American government's only cause should be to protect American liberty, protect the Bill of Rights, and protect our homes.
100%.
Like General Smedley Darlington Butler said,
War's a racket.
"War's a racket."
Yeah.
Very good. Yes, sir. But I was just gonna say. So the other thing he said, and you'll have people accusing others of being biased. And well, wait a minute, that doesn't happen, does it? Well, if you look at what happens with the Middle East, if you urge for this, you see what happens. So I think that for the next candidate that says, "I'd like to appeal to everybody," say, look, each person here has the freedom and the natural right to, if they feel they got to go fight overseas somewhere, that's their right to do it. If they want to contribute their money, that's their right to do it. But
we're
no
not
one
doing it for government down.
But no one has the right to force their fellow Americans or any other human beings to support their cause and to support some foreign government or any special interest like that. And I think you do that, that's a principled stance, and nobody's being disadvantaged by it.
Two questions real quick, Dennis. One, on the foreign entanglements dynamic, and then I want to go, well, I got two questions on the foreign entanglement. One, it seemed that Washington was savvy enough to realize that we don't have all of the information in any one of these conflicts, especially back then, when information was a little bit slower, we could say, than popping open your smartphone, which they didn't have.
And how could you know what's on the ground thousands and thousands of miles away?
Correct. Well, I think of the Napoleonic War, where was the Rockefeller shorted the stock,
the Rothschilds,
and then the news came through and they'd shorted everything, and then when it finally came through that no, they bankrupted them. So that's one question. If you had, or not really a question, but a statement to see if you had any other insight on that. And then the second one is this, and I think it's a little bit more important. How do we juxtapose or balance out Jefferson sending the Marines in to fight the Barbary pirates throughout the Mediterranean, but then still stay out of, and I'm 100% with you, no foreign entanglements, but where does that dynamic in your mind come into where we're not involved in your foreign war, we're not involved in your jihad or your revolution or whatever, but we got shipping going on throughout the Mediterranean, and these pirates are attacking our ships, they're seizing our people, and they're putting them in slavery, they're doing all these things. How do we balance that out in the foreign the foreign what's the word I'm looking for?
Entanglements, militarism.
No, I was thinking of your foreign affairs, your foreign
policy.
Foreign policy. That's policy.
But I will just quick interjection. I'm not familiar, with the details of the military action against the Barbary pirates, but I'm sure the scope of it was far more limited than anything are dealing with nowadays.
Correct, but that's why I want to get your historical perspective on that, Dennis. It's just to say, where's that balance? Because I don't believe Jefferson was violating or even going against that foreign entanglement thing, but yet he was. I mean, that's where we get. I've had enough Marines sitting here that's where we get the whole, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. That's where we get the song, is the Barbary pirates, or the Marines being sent to combat the Barbary pirates.
The great questions, Jeremy, and Shane hit a home run there. Part of this, certainly, yes, this is much more limited. It was a discrete thing, and it wasn't like we're going to be over there forever. Okay. But something else that's interesting about this, and a great source of information, this is the 10th Amendment Center. And I think Michael Bolden, Mike Meharry, and Dave Benner have all written about this and pointed out that contrary to what we sometimes hear from the media or certain talking heads, Jefferson didn't say, okay, I'm just going to go over there and do this. This crisis had been going on for a little while.
Right.
And he actually, on the one hand, thought, and I think President Adams was more like, well, someone said, we'll just pay whatever this guy wants us to pay him, the tribute that
right.
The Bay of Algiers wanted or something like that. And Jefferson's thought was, well, if you pay him this, Next time it might be more. This could be never ending.
Yeah, and that's what they're doing off the coast of Somalia now.
Right. So what do we do about that? What should we do? When he was president, then certain things were happening. What he did was he went to Congress and he said, "Here are the facts as I see them.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my recommendation." But gentlemen, they're all men at that time, right? You're the Congress.
Right.
The Constitution vests the sole power and authority to declare war on you. I'm turning to you.
Right.
You need to decide what's to be done.
Right.
The president will manage the constitutional action authorized by the Congress.
Right. Yeah. The president constitutionally only has a 90-day deployment.
Well,
right. A 90-day.
If we're attacked here on our shores.
Yeah, he's 90 days and
right.
then must have constitutionally is supposed to have.
If we're attacked on our shores, but going overseas, he's supposed to go to the
no matter what
Congress, right? And that's what he did. So he didn't. And before that, there was actually another fascinating. And Tim the Minnesota writes about this. This is George Washington, the first president in the Constitutional Federal Union.
Mm-hmm.
I think we talked about this before. There had been presidents of Congress. I guess Washington had been that himself, maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
There was about 20 presidents.
Yeah, he was like the 19th or something like that.
Okay, so in the articles, under the Articles of
Articles of Confederation.
Yeah.
right. Okay,
yeah.
So now we go to the Constitutional Federal Union, and they had huge debates over this very topic, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And the overwhelming agreement, both from pro-ratifiers who got labeled themselves Federalists and anti-ratifiers who were misleadingly labeled but they really weren't anti-Federalists. And some of the Federalists really were more Consolidationists more than Federalists. They really were,
The anti-Federalists were the real Federalists, damn it.
Amen, Shane. Shane Trejo for the win. So
it's like pro-lifers and anti-lifers, or pro-choicers and it's
okay,
all
yeah.
labeling.
But anyway, but they were all in agreement that they didn't want to have a president and executive with kingly authority to just start these things. Mm. And B, by the way, there was strong opposition to the idea of having a standing army. They were in favor of, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but state militias, because the state militia would, we would defend our homes, but the standing army could be used just like the British had used it in the British Empire to attack people's liberty or to have wars of conquest. They wanted to avoid all that. So getting back to the first question, what Jefferson did was he went to Congress. And Washington actually had a situation where there were Indian tribes. There was fighting. Now, this is on the North American continent. Yeah. In the West, the Northwest probably included Michigan, but maybe it was even east of here a little bit. But there was stuff going on.
When was the Louisiana Purchase? It was under Jefferson. So was that?
That was Jefferson. This is Washington being president.
Yeah.
And he went to Congress before he initiated anything other than what he saw as a strictly defensive action.
Right.
So there's lots of precedent for that. And so then the question comes up, well, what should we do? So there's interesting work that's been done, even to this idea. Should the government provide, in a form of, I don't know, is that socialism in some way to say but some sort of a subsidy? We'll provide you security for your ships.
Right.
Maybe, somebody like Robert P. Murphy, Dr. Murphy, he's with the Mises Institute, and he's written about this topic, that you could have private, market-oriented.
Is that where the merchant marines would have come from, kind of?
I don't think so. I think that's an interesting question to look at. We talked about privateers.
Yes.
They did have privateers that were used for defense. England used privateers against the Spanish Armada, right? Wasn't that part? Okay. But the idea, thank you, sir. But the idea there was, some of these people said you actually could have a free market, non-governmental defense of shipping, and also consequences for people that violate that. But even if you don't do that, even if you say we're going to maintain like having a navy that's going around could help protect merchant shipping, that's far different than from what we've been seeing.
100%.
And what we've really seen, as General Butler said, it's been a racket. Mm-hmm. As with every other government program that was supposed to help a situation, with whether it's poverty or education or health, when they get involved in war and foreign policy, we get more wars, more foreign conflicts, more death, we're less safe, less free, and less prosperous because of this global war on terror, which has really been a war of terror and terror against the American people. Yeah. Because you can see what's happening now. The attacks on freedom of speech are becoming more and more blatant here in England and in Australia and in Canada, right?
They're arresting people for memes.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, there's a lady, she's a Michigan graduate, Allison Weir, I think I was just reading about. She's got a website, If Americans Knew, and she's highly critical of the Israeli state and Israeli policies. And the FBI raided her. And we've had other situations like that too.
Mhm.
So this whole, and then the other thing that's happened, and I was just listening to Scott Horton talking to Ben Swan on the way over here. I was listening, and Scott reminds us the economic catastrophe that's been visited on us since foreign policy interventionism has been running wild,
Right.
in terms of monetary inflation,
Right.
and what that's done, and how it's hollowed out our industrial base and made people poorer on a real basis. And today, the median age of people buying homes is skyrocketed. The price of the medium home and everything else is
It's
skyrocketed.
ridiculous.
And so you've got a small group of people that are making a lot of money out of this, while we're losing our freedom, we're losing all of our liberty, we're losing our privacy,
Mhm.
and we have growing numbers of people of multi-generational homes, or in some cases not even homes at all, where they're living under the freeway or in cars in the Walmart parking lot.
Yeah.
We should be outraged by this. And these same people, and you got a bunch of these Republicans that are involved just as much as the Democrats.
So do you think that the justification of something like what Jefferson did constitutionally has become, because we used to have these commercials, I don't know if they're still on now, but a global force for good, and they'd show a Navy ship out there and go, listen, we had a policy of, or at least a proclamation of, no foreign entanglements. We had a president that went through the correct chains to protect our merchant ships. And now that has devolved into giving money to certain countries, being involved in their foreign entanglements, being supplying our troops, our blood, sweat, and tears, our greatest resource, the children of this country, in those areas. And the result is that the military-industrial complex becomes rich while the rest of the people of the nation become poor.
And become less safe. And I think it was Chalmers Johnson was the name of the fellow. He had a phrase, the self-looking ice cream cone. But they, I mean, this think of it like in Fantasia. You've seen the movie, right?
Mhm.
That Disney had, and there was a Sorcerer's Apprentice. So you might think of it like that. The sorcerer tells Mickey Mouse, who's the apprentice, "Yeah, I know how to do this, but you go ahead." Well, then he does, and all of a sudden, the whole thing is just all the water, and the broom's carrying the water around and all this, and he doesn't know how to stop it.
Right.
And that's what's happened now. The very people that say we're protecting you are actually the greatest threat to us, sometimes directly, other times indirectly.
Oh, yeah.
And it's all in violation of their oath of office.
Right.
And there's no consequence for any of them, including for all these people. And they just voted in Washington to send all this money over to Israel. I'm saying the Simon T. Glenn amendments are right here. It says you can't do that.
I knew day one when they passed the Patriot Act, or even when they were proposing the Patriot Act, that it was nothing to do with being a patriot or something to protect us. What do we got going here, Larry?
Jefferson's finest.
Jefferson Reserve. Let me get glasses here. So this is Jefferson's Reserve single barrel. That's my band, single barrel.
This is actually what Jefferson went to war with to get out of the hands of the Barbary pirates.
Nice.
This is the best shit.
This very old Kentucky bourbon whiskey, very small batch. There's no other, just a special bottle. I was looking for more information. I'm going to have to look it up. We got it in the skull. Did you bring this, Scully's?
No, it just
this was here.
magically appeared.
Just magically appeared. Hey, cheers,
Cheers.
my friends.
And Thomas Jefferson said, when there's a usurpation of power, the rightful remedy is nullification.
We'll talk about nullification later with the Defend the Guard Act. I think we should dovetail into the disaster in Syria.
It's got a nice flavor.
It does have a nice flavor. It's warm going down. Very good. All right, let's do that. Let's dovetail into the Syria. Tim, because of our start time, I'm not sure on our clock.
We have a break ready anytime.
I know. What are we at though? Are we at an hour and a half?
We are. I would love it.
50 minutes.
We are at an hour.
We're at an hour.
Yes, and the breakout media happens to be on Syria, I believe.
Oh,
Which is
sweet.
ironic. But if you wanted to survey the topic for 10 minutes.
So this.
What do you guys think? We'll dive into it for a few minutes and then we'll go to.
Yeah, we got some time.
Okay, all right, let's do it.
People will understand the break media a little better.
So CIA-backed trouble in Syria could lead to mass slaughter of Christians again. This article for Roger Stone was written about a week ago. It's gotten immeasurably worse since then. But this article explains a lot of the pretext of what has happened in Syria. happened like 8-9 years ago or whatever. It can so much has happened since then. It seems almost like ancient history. But what happened was during the Obama administration, the Obama regime funded a CIA clandestine war where they funded groups like al-Nusra, which is literally rebranded Al Qaeda. They're like, Al Qaeda, that sounds bad.
Mhm.
We'll call ourselves al-Nusra, so we can. It sounds more palatable when Obama and company are giving them weapons. So $1 billion goes into groups like al-Nusra to overthrow the Assad regime. It was not successful, but in the meantime, horrible civil war, atrocities beyond your worst nightmares happened. Christians, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Christians displaced and killed. So it all went to hell, and it still has not recovered or recuperated. So, but there had been kind of a ceasefire or lessening in hostilities there that seemingly had stabilized the region until about 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
2 weeks ago, boom, the same terrorist groups that Obama had funded are back with a vengeance and started taking land very, very quickly, seizing much of Aleppo. Then they seized some other cities, and as of yesterday, they seized Damascus, and Assad had to flee to Russia for asylum. So these terror groups, these Al Qaeda rebranded terror groups, have taken control of Syria,
Mhm.
and they're saying, "Oh, we're going to play nice with the Kurds. We're going to play nice with the ethnic Christians." They're saying that until they have established their power and have grips on power, then that's going to change very quickly. They're in power right now,
Yep.
and a lot of people, people who you would expect, I'm an America First person. Richard Grenell, the Trump hanger-oner, total douchebag. He's cheering. A lot of people like that we're so happy for the Syrian people. They're freed. Well, they're going to be freed from, Assad's rule, where it was secular. Christians had freedom to practice, to being run by Al Qaeda,
Mhm.
where there's going to be refugees coming out into the West. Europe's going to be plagued with more migrants. There's going to be more terrorism, and it's going to be an absolute disaster. It's going to be at least as bad as Libya was, or worse. The only good thing in comparison to Libya was that Assad was able to get out with his family alive, and he wasn't butchered and tortured in the streets by the Islamists,
What do you mean,
like
sodomized to death?
sodomized to death, like Gaddafi was.
Mhm.
So all the same people who said that, the world would be better without Saddam, the world will be better without Gaddafi, they're saying, no, the world's going to be so much better without Assad, but they're going to unleash the same terror and hell on the world again. And who benefits? The military-industrial complex benefits, obviously.
Yep.
Turkey is very much behind these terror groups, so Turkey's going to benefit. They're going to want the Kurds ethnically cleansed. That's what they've been trying to do for decades.
Mhm.
Turkey is, very infamously hostile to Christians, as Dennis knows from their treatment of Armenians, from their current support of the new Armenian genocide through their client state, Azerbaijan. So every sign points to Christians being slaughtered, being displaced, being mistreated. It's going to be hell in Syria, and the way it came about, it's hard to believe that this was just done without U.S. intelligence knowing, without the Mossad knowing. I think that all of these major players either plotted it directly or gave it the thumbs up to happen.
Mhm.
And they, from their perspective, it hurts Russia, it hurts Iran, it hurts Hezbollah, so it's a plus. But if you look at what happens, in the region, terrorism being promoted, terrorism against America increasing, Christians being displaced, hell on earth in Syria, countless refugees into Europe, it's going to be a total disaster, but a win for the military-industrial complex.
Yeah, and the thing that bothers me the most about that is the dynamic of the Christians being not bothers me the most, but one of the things at the top that bothers me about that is the Christians, and most people don't get that information. We don't get that the amount of Christians that are being slaughtered in these countries, there's heavy duty throughout there. In fact, most people think about visiting the Holy Land, Israel. They don't realize if you stray off the path of the tour guides and enter into it, you're not welcome there. They'll spit on you. They don't like you. Israel, our ally, our great friend. Ukraine, the number one post-World War II Nazi regime, the descendants of the Nazis. They got swastikas on their tanks. Well, we're going to support Nazis over there? I mean, of course, we brought them over here with Operation Paperclip, so I get it. But these dynamics of Christians right now, it's the same thing when they talk about racism and talk about slavery in this country. And I go, then why don't you go over to Africa where the Muslims are selling black people on slave blocks today in parts of Africa? You're so hell-bent on getting rid of slavery, but you don't want to go over to Africa where it's actually happening and uproot it. So the Christians over here throughout the Middle East and in other countries, China's horrible on that as well. They'll harvest. You find out you're a Christian, your organs are getting harvested. These are things that are happening real time over there, and our money and our troops and our military-industrial complex is neck deep in that.
And somehow I don't expect that the UN, the refugee industry, I don't think I'll be hearing them talk about and cry about the plight of Christians in Syria and how they need to be protected.
No.
And they need to be refugees and we need to accept them in our countries. That actually might be legitimate reason to accept them in different countries in the West.
Right.
But no, they'll be forgotten.
Right.
Their holy lands
over here.
Their holy lands that they've been praying in since the days when Christ was alive. They'll be destroyed, raped, defiled.
Mm-hmm.
And all in the name of these groups that are Islamic. Sure, they're technically Islamic, but they're really foreign mercenaries backed by different countries, different states that have very evil agendas to get more power, to help the military-industrial complex, to hurt different countries that are seen as a threat, and all the Christians in the area are just pawns being destroyed for this evil agenda.
Now, what's this one that we're looking at
this
here?
This is back when because again, this whole propaganda happened again, it happened back in 2015 through 2017.
Okay.
And this is the White Helmets who they won an Oscar for being such heroes, fighting against the evil Assad regime, blah, blah, blah. And this is, they were caught on video committing a brutal execution. And that's what's posted here. These are the type of people who just took over in Syria.
And do we know who the victim was there?
I'm not sure, but whoever it is, they're being publicly executed.
These groups are the ones, if you'll recall, they were burning people alive in cages in the early iteration.
So is that a person kneeling? They've got them on their knees right there? And they're just chopping their... So for those of you that are not familiar with this or disturbed,
this is going to be happening unless they get out of there. It's going to be happening to Christians under the new terrorist Islamic regime. Yeah,
and they all celebrate.
$1 billion from Obama sponsored that brutal murder.
It's interesting. Apparently Obama at some point, according to Greenwald, I heard this interview he did with a fellow whose name we could look it up. He just recently interviewed him about Syria. I think Tamimi was his last name, but anyway, Greenwald said Obama at some point said, "You know what? Maybe we're going down the wrong path here. Maybe we should adjust a little bit."
Mm-hmm.
And instead of trying to overthrow Assad, she said, "Well, why would you try to?" I think it was Operation Timber Sycamore. Was it what they called that?
Yes.
CIA? Yeah.
Yes.
He said, maybe you think about it. Assad and us, we have some of the same enemies, and the Russians and the Syrians and the Iranians and us all have some of the same enemies. Why don't we all work together? But Trump apparently had some similar thoughts along those lines. He said, "Well, yeah, this kind of doesn't make sense to be doing this way." Even though what happened during the Trump administration was, unfortunately, the U.S. troops. At one point he wanted to bring troops out, and then he said, "Okay, we'll just take their oil." And then there were these horrible sanctions that were passed, punishing the Syrian people for resisting the jihadists and the Zionists and the others that were, and the Turks. The role of Turkey in this is quite interesting because Erdogan has spoken publicly about this Neo-Ottoman Empire. One of their
he gets it. He gets the big picture.
Yeah, so that's his big picture thing. And supposedly he said, well, we talked to Assad about, we could discuss how we're going to have the situation work out in Syria. He said, well, why would Turkey have anything to say about that? But they're taking over. In fact, Turkish army has now gone into Aleppo, which has lots of descendants of survivors of the Turkish genocide of the Armenians who live in Aleppo, and this is just horrific that this would happen. And of course, the genocide is also of Pontic Greeks and of Assyrians, who we now would call Chaldeans, right? But so Erdogan wants to have this giant Neo-Ottoman caliphate. He's working with his buddy, the Bloody Butcher from Baku, a human embodiment of evil known as Ilham Aliyev, and
is that the Azerbaijan leader?
He's the Azerbaijani leader. And they just had this environmental thing, COP29, which is really, because how stupid this was. Azerbaijan not only does a lot of fossil fuels, which I think fossil fuels, that's great. It'd be bad if we didn't have any fossil fuels, right? But they have a horrible pollution situation there. I mean, to say, and they say, oh, look, they call Artsakh Karabakh. Look, see, we have net zero. So, yeah, net zero Armenians live there now in this area that was for thousands of years an Armenian area. And they're saying, oh, but and they have Armenian hostages in Azerbaijan illegitimately that should be freed. And according to they weren't supposed to be doing this, but they got these people, including a man named Ruben Vardanyan, a great philanthropist, and they're mistreating them in these prisons. And they're threatening now to put a corridor through Armenia they call it the Zangezur corridor. They want to control it, divide the country up, and totally destroy it. And once that's done, they think, and if Iran is weakened, because Iran doesn't like this, if Iran is weakened, then they could finish Armenia. And this Aliyev spews the most ridiculous lies, historically speaking, and he completely falsifies the history of that region. But the one thing he doesn't falsify is when he makes a threat, he often follows through on it, and he does know the tactics to accomplish his evil goals. And he's funded by the United States, even though there was Section 907 of the Freedom Support Act, which said we're not going to give financial aid to Azerbaijan until they stop their anti-Armenian aggressions.
Right.
And this is that's there's been waivers on that. There've been presidential waivers on that for decades. And during the Trump administration, they actually increased the amount of financial aid to Azerbaijan.
Okay.
Above that, they were giving Armenia and Azerbaijan the same amount for it. Oh, right. That makes it okay, but probably get rid of all foreign aid, right? Like Ron Paul says.
I love that it came out with that. I'm agreeing with that 100%.
Well, Turkey's a member of NATO. They're considered on the mainstream of politics, despite having policies that are heinously brutal to Christians. Iran, who were told we need to hate and we need to go to war with them, and they're the bane of our existence, and they're the pure evil, or whatever. And again, I don't want to defend the Islamist regime there. They are very brutal and very repressive. But if you look in terms of what is being perpetrated against global Christianity, and you look at what Iran's doing, and you look at what Turkey's doing, Turkey's far worse. But they're our allies. They're in NATO. Right. They're mainstreamed, and everything that they do, they just fly under the radar.
Yeah.
Whereas Iran, let's go to war with them. Let's bomb them. Let's sanction them.
Right.
It just shows the complete illogical nature of our foreign policy.
They're vilifying Russia continually. They continue to do it long before Trump, the Trump-Russia collusion bullshit came through. But they're vilifying Russia across the board and not saying anything about China's atrocities. Very rare. I mean, they've got 3 million Uyghurs in concentration camps over there that build your iPhones. And then Russia, you come back to Russia and find out Russia's not letting boys and girls bathrooms. They're promoting family values. They're promoting Christian values. They've gone back to not only allowing, but actually promoting, and a lot of time partnering with the Orthodox Church throughout Russia to do a lot of things. So Russia's not perfect, but I see these conflicts through there. Is once these leaders become start to empower their own people, that's when our military industrial complex comes in. When you look at Libya, Gaddafi was empowering his people. You could go to college for free. You get married. You got a year off. They had some of the best infrastructure, best roads, best everything. They were
probably the nicest country in all of Africa.
Right. They were
besides South Africa.
They were taking their natural resources that were across the board and using them for the country. And then you could still be an entrepreneur, still make your own way in there. And they vilified him, made him out to be a bad guy. There's a whole bunch of other stories just like this, where these former dictators get to a certain point where they realize, I've got to empower my people. And then our military industrial complex comes in there and just screws it all up.
Is there another thread we see? Some people allege, and I think there's something to it, or at least coincidentally, some of these countries that end up being the big targets either want to have a gold currency. I think he wanted to do that. Gaddafi,
Yeah,
Gaddafi wanted to go to gold.
Yeah.
Gold.
Yeah.
Or they don't have a central bank, or a central bank that's in the same milieu as the other central banks.
Yeah. Tim's got a great video for the break on Syria, continuing this conversation. And then when we come back, we're going to dive into a couple other issues before we finish up tonight. So you want to take us out on that, Tim? We'll take a little break here, and we'll see you guys in a few minutes.
I hope I
Stop playing.
This is
that.
Welcome to another time from Sweden. This of the white city of Latakia.
I know. Let's try that again. Break media freaked out. Break media freaked out. Have you ever heard Tim Hawkins? Yes. What is going on here? Come on.
Did you guys watch the last one?
Yeah. Oh, wait, I haven't seen the new ones.
This is my brain. And welcome to another update, this time from Syria. So what a night it was. Let's go first to the city of Latakia. So here you have the toppling of the statue of Hafez al-Assad in the Alawite city of Latakia. This is the Alawite canton. Alawites are a sect, a very small sect, within which was Assad, who was ruling Syria. But the majority of people in Syria are actually Sunni. This is another clip showing you people entering Assad's palace and starting looting. And this is a common picture we've seen all over the world when a dictator falls, people start looting his personal goods. Here you have another clip of a minister of the Assad regime taken by the rebels. So it's official. The Assad regime is gone. It's totally done. After about 50 years, now the power in Syria has changed, and we are witnessing a new set of rules in the Middle East. Syria no longer is going to be controlled by the Alawites. It's going to be Sunni from now on. And you may ask, what happened to Assad? Well, we don't know now, but it doesn't look good. Here you can see the graph of the plane on which Assad was, and suddenly this plane loses a huge amount of altitude. It loses more than 6,000 meters suddenly. So it's either fallen or exploded or something happened to it. We don't know yet. Now, if you look at the direction of this plane, it was going north. So north of Syria in that direction. So that direction is one country, and that's Russia. Now, speaking of Russia, we talked about the city of Latakia on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. So Russia had two military bases in Latakia and Tartus. And because of the turmoil in Syria, they had to quickly evacuate. I mean, this is huge. This is a huge blow for Putin and Russia. It's a huge dishonor. It's something they would never imagine would have happened. They lost the access to the Middle East for Syria now. And this is another footage from inside Damascus, inside the palace of Assad, and you see people just walking there, doing pictures, being cheerful. So this is the situation right now. Right now, people are cheerful. They are happy that the regime is gone. And you can see people making pictures of themselves. So they are happy. But what's actually going to be important is what happens next. And of course, this is very important also for Israel. As you can see on this map, Israel is bordering with Syria. And if we zoom in, we will see that Israel's strategic territory, the Golan Heights, are bordering with Syria. That's why Israel has already deployed a lot of their military to this area, because it is not a secret that the new power is not going to be friendly to Israel. Here you have the rebels broadcasting from a national television in Syria. And of course, those are the people that will be ruling Syria right now. And if you look at them, they do not look like politicians. They are fighters. And that's why they are more dangerous to Israel than Assad. Of course, Assad was not a nice guy, but he was not a fighter. He was really a puppet of Russia and Iran. He was well educated, eloquent, and definitely not this type of fighter that would fight for his death. That's why he escaped Syria, because he was afraid for his life. He was this man that came from this Alawite minority. He was hated by the majority of the people. He was cruel to his people. He was not afraid to use cruel tactics to destroy opposition, but he was not a fighter. But the people that will be ruling Syria now, they are of a different breed. They are seasoned in fighting for years, fighting with Assad, fighting with the Kurds. They are very, very dangerous for Israel, and they are not afraid to die. This is an opposite to Assad, who didn't really want to get under the skin of Israel too much because he was afraid they will respond by killing him. Now, this victory of the rebels is also a huge blow for Hezbollah and a huge blow for Iran that was supporting Hezbollah in Syria. Now, the country that is very happy is Turkey, because Turkey is the power that was supporting a lot of those rebel groups. And of course, Turkey is still interested in restoring the Ottoman Empire. The question now is Turkey gonna be able to control those groups? They are quite diverse and they are not a monolith. So the question is how Turkey will be able to control them once they get into power. We know that when people go to power, it changes everything. Here you can see again a map of the Shia population in the Middle East, and you can see that Turkey is only 10% of the population is Shia, whereas in Syria, it's 15 to 20%. So obviously these new groups that took power, they're not Shia, they are Sunni. And of course, this is a major, major blow for Iran. They lost just a huge, huge country over which they had influence through Hezbollah. It is estimated that Iran was sending each year up to $900 million to support Hezbollah in Syria and Lebanon. That's a great, great investment. And now it doesn't look good for Hezbollah because they are a natural enemy of the new power in Syria. And the former leader of Hezbollah in Lebanon, Nasrallah, said that if Syria will fall, their resistance is over. So from Israel's perspective, one enemy is weakened, but there is another one that rises.
This is my brain.
All right, we are back, and Larry decided to leave us, so that's okay. Now we can really talk smack. Larry. Larry's wife is heading out of town tomorrow, and he wanted to spend a little time with her. She gave him permission to stay for the first half of the show, at least. So,
Happy wife, happy life.
there you go. Look at this. One of the ones that Shane sent to me. Moments after the fall of Syria's government was announced, Israel invaded. How do you say that?
Kunitra
In the south.
Kunitra.
Coincidence? Definitely not.
So as
Definitely
soon
not. Definitely
as Syria fell, Israel was ready to come in and take more of the land, and enrich themselves.
Yeah.
So it was, definitely seems like it was something that was coordinated ahead of time.
Just a coincidence. What are you talking about?
Coincidence.
Just-
Does not seem like a coincidence, and they're one of the primary benefactors of Syria falling, and right after the ceasefire happened between was it Hamas? What the ceasefire, Dennis? Was it between
Israel and Hezbollah?
Israel and Hezbollah ceasefire happens.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we'll cease fire on you guys. And then immediately right afterwards, boom, overthrow of Syria is initiated. So we're going to destroy, instead of coming after you, we're going to abide by the terms of the ceasefire, but we're going to lay waste to an entire country instead. And destroy one of your top allies.
I'd like to interject one thing into that. They kept bombing Lebanon. So they didn't really cease fire.
No.
It was a one-sided thing. That apparently Hezbollah at one point fired back at an Israeli military base, and the Israelis said, "Aha, they're breaking the ceasefire," which Israel hadn't been observing. Really. And then they blasted Lebanon some more.
Yeah. Did I just turn your mic up and then not his? All right, Shane, quit fucking with your thing. Talk again.
Hello.
Dennis.
Greetings.
There you go. For some reason I had that one. All right. That sounds good. All right. And you're fiddling with yours. That's better, buddy. They should put it on that side just because you're leaning that way. But that's exact right position to put it on. Pinch that nipple. There you go. To make you guys all get nipple rings so you know where it's going to go. There. I think that'll work. We'll see.
Bam.
Anyways, so yeah, it's another foreign entanglement, another foreign conflict. It's not clear. It's not cut and dry. It's got a lot of mud and a lot of garbage going on within it. And one of the main reasons I don't like to be involved in foreign entanglements, other than a historical context that we've already went over, is the fact that, and we've already pretty much said it, is we don't know what's going on. We're being told by this mass media. I remember when CNN was faking the bombings and they had green screen going on and they're faking that they're being attacked, right? And who was the one CNN anchor that came back and said that he was in the helicopter and it was taking fire? And then you dove in the story and it never happened.
Was it Geraldo?
No.
Geraldo always does bullshit like that.
He's a super mustache.
Well, of course, there was the Hillary Clinton situation where she claimed she was in Yugoslavia, right? And the plane landed and they were under fire and she had to run for cover, and that turned out to all be.
Yeah, that was bullshit. Yeah, it always bullshit.
And there's the Hillary Clinton thing where she was being interviewed and she cackled and chortled.
Yeah.
At the gruesome.
We came,
death
we saw, he died.
And of course, there was her friend.
Yeah.
The late Madeleine Albright, who was being interviewed about this.
500,000 children dead in Iraq. Do you think that's a? Yeah, I
think it was worth the cost.
It was a tough decision, but the price was worth it. Now,
the price is worth it.
But the verbiage there was important because A, she didn't deny it, and B, it was this tough decision. And they always say, "Oh yeah, we make these tough decisions," but the horrible effects of these tough decisions fall on other people,
right?
Never on them, and they're not even held accountable.
Right.
There's the amount of criminality, both in terms of morality and natural law, but also even the Constitution, and even beyond that, just regular legislative law, which is at a lower level, but still they violate that all the time, and there's no consequence for them.
We have since Kennedy, excluding Trump, you could arrest multiple people in any given administration since Kennedy for war crimes. Straight up, war crimes, crimes against humanity for the stuff that they did. I mean, I'm not even sure that what was it? Vietnam captain, who was the one that went spastic out there?
Well, the one guy blew the whistle on it, right? And he stopped it.
Right, but
At My Lai, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, My Lai. My Lai. I was trying to think of the actual commander there, but my thought process on that is, having dove into a number of different things about MK Ultra programs and things like that, I don't discount a theory that it was just a test to see how much they could control troops in those types of environments and how much they could get them to do those types of atrocities because they're being mind controlled, you know? And then you get these situations over here. What does it take to wind up one of these people, to go in there and bomb and do all this stuff, you know?
I don't even think they need the MK Ultra people. I mean, just the propaganda that people are subjected to cradle to grave.
Correct.
Nonstop every day from
right
the day they're born to the day they die. That's enough to get them to be compliant with anything. Look at COVID.
Correct.
How everyone, they flipped the switch.
Yeah.
Everyone went along with everything, and no one had any second thoughts about it.
But that's my point, is that the MK Ultra is the extreme, the absolute extreme of it. And then you take the information, or take what they've learned from those programs. They're coming to get us. That's just
it's a drone.
It's a big helicopter.
Larry waved in his federal.
Yeah, he
was our federal handler the entire time.
Right, and now
we're screwed.
He's like, that chopper was low, dude. I don't know if anybody heard that. Yeah, that was coming through low. But MK Ultra was the extreme of that. But what they learned on the mass media and the population controlling and all those mechanisms all filtered down. It's like, why did they give people in the military 10 times or 100 times the dosage of LSD? Because then when they introduced it later at a correct dosage, they knew how it affected on extreme levels. They can then they can manipulate that. They can do all that stuff. And you're looking at a whole populace and all of these wars that they're doing. They're manipulating people on both sides of it. And you wonder, what is your ultimate goal? What's your gain? Is it just the money? Is it just the power? Is it just the control? What is it? Because for all intents and purposes, we're talking about Syria, but for all intents and purposes, they had to lower the age of the draft in Ukraine because they've murdered so many of their own people, sent them to the slaughter.
And you get U.S. politicians and U.S. bureaucrats like Anthony Blinken pushing him to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's going to be how many dead Ukrainians and dead Russians through all this, how much money will be wasted, how much destruction, and all avoidable.
All avoidable.
And then the same corporations that were responsible for making all the bombs will come in and rebuild it and make billions more.
I'm a firm believer that the reason they left everything in Afghanistan was because the military industrial complex, the suppliers, they're like, we'll just build more, leave it there. We'll make more. Multiple people were behind the scenes negotiating their next contract, and they said, that stuff's outdated.
That's
new stuff.
I believe that's called Keynesian economic stimulus.
That sounds about right.
Or Keynesianism. Yeah.
Let's shift gears. You guys wanted to talk about this. Defending the Guard. That's number 3.
Yes.
Right? Let's do this one, and we'll get on this one.
So Dennis Marburger, he is a member of the Michigan Republican Party State Committee.
Mm-hmm.
He's on the Issues Committee. And his what was that?
Trying to get rid of the form.
Oh, the form. Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
You have to do that?
Forms these days. No. Yeah, he's got to do that. You're good.
Hit
the little X.
Yeah.
So Dennis is a member of the Michigan State Republican Party Committee, and he's on the Issue Subcommittee, and he has been pushing for the Michigan Republican Party to endorse Defend the Guard legislation. So Dennis, take it away. Explain what Defend the Guard does.
Thanks, Shane. So Defend the Guard is really a form of law enforcement by people at the state level, constitutional law enforcement, which says that the legislature and the governor of the state of Michigan will not send our National Guards people into a foreign combat zone absent a constitutionally mandated congressional declaration of war. And if they are in a foreign combat zone, bring them back.
Right.
And so the idea here is, I think it's pretty straightforward. And when people hear it, oh, that sounds great. You do get some pushback from, again, the military industrial complex and some politicians and some bureaucrats. And it can be quite a contentious fight. And yet to the average person on the street, it seems blindingly obvious that this is the way it should work. I believe it's an issue that unites people across party lines and communities and walks of life and that sort of thing. So we did get it through the issues committee. Our goal is to have this passed by the state committee at Saturday's state committee meeting in Frankenmuth. And
in Frankenmuth.
Right.
Where'd you guys meet?
Well, we're going there.
You're going there.
We're going to be at the I believe at the Bavarian Inn is where
Bavarian Inn? Okay.
where we're going to have that.
There's going to be eating chicken all day long, funded by the taxpayer, typical political bureaucrat hobnobbing session.
Well, actually, the good news, I don't think it is funded by the taxpayer. I just want to hurriedly interject that. I don't think it is. But
I worked at Zender's and I lived,
really?
I lived in Millington as a kid. So
That's
I
sweet. I was up there
Zender's.
this weekend. I wanted to get some food at the Bavarian Inn. It was like 2:30 p.m., 3.5 hour wait to get chicken.
Dude,
what?
it gets packed in there.
Un-American.
Oh yeah.
It gets packed in there.
It
Dude.
was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Bavarian, but that's German. Hey, what's going on? Okay.
Actually, we won't rabbit trail. At one point, Bavarian Inn and Zender's were owned by the same. It's the same family.
I
but
thought
then
they were.
split.
Oh, they split. I thought it was the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
They split.
So the beauty of this is it's a relatively simple thing.
Yeah.
But again, it's and we talked about earlier, as Shane mentioned, we get to this, we're talking about nullification, and which was a word that Thomas Jefferson used starting in actually 1799. But he and Madison both were working, but what they basically said was, and they were articulating ideas that had already come around.
Yeah.
But when President Adams, who was the second president in the Constitutional Federal Union.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, Adams is sick.
Well, second.
Well, he said it correctly. Underneath the Constitution.
The 20th overall.
Okay. Continue.
Thank you. So anyway, so he got through the Congress with his party, the Federalist Party, the Alien and Sedition Acts.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Okay. Now they were doing a couple things. One is they were attacking the freedom of speech of the American people, and the other thing was he was saying this is interesting. He wanted to deport people he deemed were unfriendly to him because he thought that Jefferson, being the Francophile he was, wanted to overthrow Adams,
right,
and use these French people. Apparently, there was nothing to this idea that he had, but it was a very real threat. And then he said, "Well, if the president can just do that at his own whim," and so, Madison and Jefferson opposed this, and some people might find this interesting today. The freedom of speech part wouldn't be controversial, of course, that they were defending that, but the other part, they said, "No, you don't have the right to deport people if they're friendly aliens," and they define friendly aliens as we don't have a declaration of war against that country.
Okay.
So if there's a declaration of war, now it's different. Okay.
Right.
I don't know if they're the French. I think you should be able to deport them just because they're rude.
Oh.
Just because they're French.
Just because they're French.
But at the time, Jefferson and
back week
others,
later, but you're out now.
they appreciated all the help the French gave us in the American Revolution. They said,
100%.
True,
Yeah.
true. We owe them for that.
So that was huge. But
Yeah.
so they opposed this stuff because so did they use the First Amendment or the Fourth Amendment or no, the 10th Amendment.
Yeah.
And it said if something's not delegated by the Constitution, it's not in the Constitution delegated to what they called then the general government, it was left to the people
And the states respectively.
and the states respectively, right? So they said this doesn't come under your purview. And so this has a lot of interesting implications to it and ramifications to it, most of which have been forgotten. But then they wrote the Kentucky Resolves of 1798 and the Virginia Resolves, which Madison wrote anonymously, and people thought somebody else had written them initially. They were worried that their mail was being read. They were worried about a lot of different things. And they kept the fight going. Jefferson and Adams had been great friends back in the day. They became bitter enemies, and they became great friends again. Jefferson was his vice
And they
president.
died on the same day.
Same day, just
Yeah,
a couple hours. Right. And
Yeah.
Adams thought Jefferson was still. He said, "Well, at least Jefferson still lives," but no, Jefferson had died earlier. But they had reconciled. But anyway,
Mhm.
but the point that they made was when there's a usurpation of power by the general government, then the rightful act is a nullification or non-compliance. And before ratification of the Constitution, Madison talked about, because the anti-ratification group said, "Oh, this is going to be a tyrannical government." Oh no, there's a lot of ways to resist that.
Mhm.
The frowns of the magistrate, he said, and
Right.
non-compliance with the officers of the union. Okay,
Right.
so what we're doing here is we're just saying that we're telling our state government to obey the Constitution
Mhm.
and to not engage, to not be party to acts of war unless there is a declaration of war. And if there is no declaration of war, then the legislature and the governor may not send our people overseas
Right.
into a foreign combat zone.
Let me read a little bit of this. This is Representative Steve Carra quote. He says, "We should have the decency to declare war before we send our brave men and women to fight overseas. That's how we show respect for the heroic sacrifice, by properly acknowledging the tremendous cost of what we are asking them to do." And then jumping down a paragraph, the reason that power to declare war rests with Congress is because Congress is the voice of the people. It is the people who are supposed to have the power to decide whether or not our country should engage in conflict. Too often decisions are made by warmongers and the military-industrial complex, and it's the people who serve who pay the price. Now, Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, the last actually declared war was World War II. We have not had a declared war other than the war on poverty and the war on terror and the war on this or the war on that, but an actual naming of a country, declaration of war, we're at war with you, has not happened since World War II. Is that correct?
That's correct. It was 1942, and had a chance to meet with Dan McKnight at the Republican National Convention. Dan McKnight is the leader of Bring Our Troops Home U.S. And the Defend the Guard movement. And so he asked us this question. He said, he's saying, who's the last country we declared war on? And I believe it was Hungary.
Okay.
But it was and it may have been two or three at the same time, but two or three of the smaller Axis powers.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So back in 1942.
Yeah. Japan would have been the first, and then Germany.
Japan and Germany. Yeah. Because then Hitler declared war on us, thinking
because we were allied.
Yeah.
Or they were allied together.
Yeah. So he thought he was duty bound or something.
Yeah.
But Dan McKnight, if you get a chance he'd be a fellow to chat with and interview. And Dan, I think, served 11 years in the military, Air Force and Army, regular, and also National Guard reserve. And he was over in Afghanistan for a while, and he was with some National Guardsmen from another state. They were not having the material they needed.
Of course.
So he calls the newly elected governor, who I thought he said was Jim Risch, who is now in the Senate.
Okay.
But he was the newly elected governor of Idaho, and he said, "Governor, we've never talked, but here's what," introduce himself. And the governor said, "You know what? I'm brand new. I'm not sure how to do it, but I'm going to do it." And he did. He got the stuff over to him. And then Dan tried to get something through the national legislature through Senator Risch to try to take care of this problem. And he said, the guy wouldn't return his phone calls at that point. So he said, "I got to work at the state level." So that's how we began this movement.
Okay.
And there's a lot of good people that are involved in this. And as I recall, in the last sessions, 3 states in one house of the legislature passed this legislation. Arizona, led by a state senator named Wendy Rogers, who's in the Air Force Reserves.
Okay.
Yeah, so she got it through there, but then went to the Arizona House, and the Speaker of the House in Arizona put it in his desk and wouldn't bring it forward. He was primaried and defeated. I think he was running for the state Senate. They primaried him and defeated him because of that.
Yeah.
I believe 2 other states. I want to say New Hampshire and Idaho.
Okay.
Idaho, I'm pretty sure, is definitely one of them.
Right. And then Montana, they got close, but there's a bunch of states. So the push is on again to get this. It's the right thing to do morally, ethically, constitutionally, and strategically and politically. So it's a win for the people.
So this is House Bill 4336. They can get what we're encouraging everybody to call their representatives throughout the state.
Well, sure.
Well, right now I think this is going to be reintroduced for the new session.
Oh, so in January
it'll have a new number.
So it'll have a new number. It'll
Okay.
be introduced by Steve or someone else.
Okay.
So we'll keep you up to date on
Okay.
what's going on with that bill. But now that the Republicans are back in charge, there's no reason why this bill shouldn't be put up for a vote.
Yeah.
And then immediately put through. And then
Hopefully.
let's say it goes in the Senate and the Democrats there don't want to support it. Well, let's put the Democrats on the record and show that they hate the
100%.
troops and want the troops to die and want to send them over into
And that's the
foreign
rhetoric
lands
we
to
need to
die.
use.
We have to put up strong bills in the state house and dare the Democrats to not support them, and then make them choke on that and make the case to the people of how awful the Democrats are because they won't approve these bills.
And that's some of the legitimate. It's real. It's not hyperbole, but it's legitimate rhetoric that we need to be using in these things. Quick question, and then carry on with it. What you're going to say, Dennis? But you said constitutionally the National Guard. Explain, because initially we were not supposed to have a standing army except in times of war. Part of the Second Amendment calls for us to be able to have a well-regulated militia necessary for the security of a free state. How does that? We've had a standing army since at least World War I, I think, if not World War II, or definitely World War II, but maybe World War I, to one extent or another. Now you can always have the upper command centers and stuff like that, but we were never constitutionally supposed to have a standing army. How does the dynamics of the militia, which is just a citizen soldier being called up in a time of war, the National Guard, which is state by state, and a standing army, how do those dynamics play out today? How do they relate constitutionally for us?
Yeah, great question. I believe actually the standing army, I think, was around a lot earlier than that even, but it
Okay.
would get very small. So just real quickly, in the debates, and you can read about this, and again, 10th Amendment Center has excellent information on this. If it gets very in depth.
Okay.
But many of the leading American Revolutionary patriots, including veterans and leading veterans in Washington's forces, men like Henry Knox and others, urged for there to not be a standing army, but for each state to have a militia. And the idea was state militiamen would be quick to defend their homes.
100%.
Right. Okay. But it's going to make it difficult to use them for imperialist purposes. And they had just gone through some really bad situations with the British Empire and the British Army. So they did not want to have, they said the standing army was used to oppress us.
Right.
So we don't want that.
Right.
And watching it, well, we could have just a small standing army, but anyway.
Well,
so
you would want to maintain
they wanted a navy. Yeah,
right.
we got to have a navy.
But even in that, you could have. When was the Coast Guard started? You could have established the Coast Guard, or if it wasn't already established, and delegated that responsibility to guard our coast as Coast Guards. Nobody thinks of the Coast Guard as being militaristic nowadays, but the reality is the Coast Guard does cover it. I have a buddy that's a veteran that I play hockey with that served in the Coast Guard, and he was in interdiction. They would come across drug boats, and they didn't stop a boat unless it had multiple keys of whatever they were going after. And he tells me a bunch of stories. And so, but most people just think of the Coast Guard as being rescue, which is important, but they were supposed to
guard the coast.
So,
and this is an excellent question you asked, Jeremy. And the Second Amendment, the militia clause is very misunderstood.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't, some people say, oh yeah, you got to be in the militia to have and be commanded by to have own firearms. No, the idea was everybody has a natural right to self-defense. Mercy Otis War in the Muse of the American Revolution was one that spoke about that.
Mm-hmm.
And this was universally understood, but some people expressed it better than others. She was quite good at it. But in the Second Amendment, they put the militia clause in there to say, we want there to be a militia for the reasons we discussed. In order for there to be a militia, we need the people to be armed. But it wasn't, you need to have a militia and to be in it in order to have the right to own firearms. And who is the militia? Asked, I think it was George Mason, could be somebody, I thought it was Mason. And he basically said, it's all of us, except for certain public officials.
Correct.
Right.
And I'll let you continue your point, but even the Third Amendment, no soldier shall in times of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in times of war, but in a manner prescribed by law. And then even the Fourth Amendment, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, they build upon each other. The right to speak, and no establishment of against religion or the prohibiting free speech, and then the right to defend yourself, and then no soldiers quartered, because they were experiencing all of these things and knew that right to self-defense. And it even goes into it. It makes mention of it in the Fifth Amendment, just talking about how, except in cases arising in naval or land or in the militia, but actual times of war, they were prescribing how those details should work in the courts. So we read these amendments as somewhat separate, but they're building upon each other or in conjunction with each other. And it gets us to it's supposed to paint a picture, not be idealistically picked apart, like you said about the Second Amendment, that, well, you only own a weapon if you're in the militia. No, that's not what it was saying. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed on anyway, and a well-regulated militia. Well, what is that? They knew what they were saying back then. And I think it means that we have a small group of people that know how to rally people together at any given moment to rise up. And our best sharpshooters have always been our farmers. Why? Because they're killing
the farmers and the hunters.
Yeah,
right?
they're killing varmints. They're protecting their flocks, and they're also hunting.
And if you notice, all the different Bill of Rights amendments 1 through 10, all of them pertain to either limiting the central government or protecting individual rights.
100%.
So the idea that, the Second Amendment, this is what the left will say. Well, well-regulated militia, that means government regulated. That means the founding fathers didn't want the people, the common citizenry, to own guns. That's a total perversion of the historical precedent and just logic and common sense as we know it.
Well, and our communities have been attacked to the point that we don't have the cohesion that they had back then, where you had to rely. You couldn't go to Walmart or Myers or something. You had to rely on your neighbors, and you bartered for things, and you worked with each other as best you could. It wasn't a utopian by any stretch of the means, but it was definitely a system. And then you had it to where they could come into a community and go, all right, we need able-bodied men. This is going on. That's going on. Lexington, Concord. You've got all sorts of other conflicts that are going on. And I think of what you mentioned earlier in the show, talking about one of you mentioned the North Carolina, the money we could have sent. And I watched, you had the good sheriffs in those areas and other citizens that stepped up and either were deputized or acknowledged by the sheriffs, and they were all working together. The bad sheriffs, they were trying to run people out and work with FEMA and pull all sorts of bullshit. But the ones that were good, they knew. I saw the sheriff standing there giving an interview, and he's standing with one of his deputies and 3 or 4 other people, not in uniform, but definitely in their gear with their weapons, were standing with them and clearly working with the sheriffs. That to me is the dynamic of a militia, and it's not a standing army, which is supposed to be illegal on American soil. Correct me if I'm wrong. And only put together during times of war. You're going to have a small group of leadership that's ready to bring people together, but that small group of leadership doesn't constitute having the amount of standing army and sending them off. How many? We had 180 bases throughout the world right now.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Huh?
I found it.
Found what?
The United States the United States military realized it needed a well-trained standing army following the St. Clair's defeat on November 4th, 1791.
That far back?
Yep. When the force led by General Arthur St. Clair was almost entirely wiped out by a Northwestern Confederacy near modern Fort Recovery, Ohio. Okay. The plans, which were supported by the U.S. President George Washington and Henry Cox, Secretary of War, would lead to the creation of the Legion of the United States. The command would be based on 18th century military works of Henry Bonnet, Bouquet, some French name.
Bonnequet?
Bonnequet, a professional Swiss soldier. Swiss were badasses.
They still are.
Yeah,
they're required. Yeah. Every adults are all supposed to be trained and all required to have at least one firearm in the house.
Right. In 1792, Anthony Wayne, American Revolutionary War commander, and came out of retirement. So there's been a standing army since then. It was expanded to 88 regiments.
Mm-hmm.
And then again for the War of in 1808, Congress agreed the expansion of the regular army. This led to the establishment of the 5th, 6th, 7th Regular Infantry Regiment. So
do we have
which led to the military-industrial complex?
Exactly.
Get your take on that, Dennis. I didn't realize it was that far back because you
leading
see
into the War of 1812.
You see the rise of of conflicts, and then you see the diminishment of conflicts, and until we go into World War I, really, and World War II, we're not outside of really our borders, you know.
Well, let's see. Yeah, there's
I mean, there's small things, but I mean, yeah,
well,
go ahead.
The Mexican War, the Spanish-American War, and it was really, it's interesting when you read about all that. In fact, there was a Yale sociologist and professor, very sharp fellow, very individual rights-oriented guy, who wrote, I think it was in 1899 or 1900, he said, when the United States was conquered by Spain, and people really said, wait a minute, we won big. What do you mean? And then he looked at the Spanish system, and he looked at how America was being governed, an American government, and what he said, look how our government now has changed to become so much like what Spain had. So we become, and people sometimes will say, well, the United States government has become like the British Empire, only worse.
Mm-hmm.
So we become, our government now has become what the founding fathers are fighting against.
Very imperialistic, very, very
And despotic at home.
Yeah.
The triumvirate, we actually went back to Rome.
Right.
What we did.
So we go from okay, so that's something to learn that
Yeah, there's a
I know it was
Seminole War
originally
before
in
the
there that no standing army, but then to see that it was as early as the
1792.
1792 that they felt the necessity.
And there'd be Washington. I bet you that. I think that was that fighting with the Indians. I think he was the president. That's what we talked about earlier.
But
he went to Congress to say, now what should I do? He didn't just
Correct.
initiate it on his own.
100%. And then aside from the Spanish-American War, which was still on our continent, it was literally on our border.
Well, no, Spanish-American War, Philippines and Cuba.
Oh, that's right. But I thought it was
The Mexican War was on our continent.
right. Wasn't that tied together?
No, they're far apart.
But I'm saying it's. I thought there was. All right, correct me.
Because Polk was the president. That's pre-Civil War. And
oh, that one. Okay, yes.
And that's one where and Lincoln. And interestingly enough, Lincoln was the president. Well, wait a minute. Why are we doing this? He says, well, the Mexico aggressed against the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And Lincoln said, well, where's the spot that happened? Show me. And then they made fun of Lincoln, saying he had a spotty record. We find a lot to complain about with Lincoln, but he actually, I think he was pretty good on that. He held Polk to. So what is going on here with all this?
Right. And then, so I think about the Spanish. I wasn't thinking about the Philippines. I was thinking about the Mexican-American War, and that was around the time with Texas coming around and all sorts of other stuff.
And then there was stuff in the Philippines. I've read a little bit about it, but it seems like it'd be an interesting topic. So the United States kicks Spain out, and someone, the Philippines, okay, they go, well, great, now we can be independent. Well, not so fast. And then you read about that, and someone said, and the waterboarding that was done, and the occupation of the Philippines. And by the way, then there's Hawaii. We didn't talk about that.
Hawaii is basically, when you really study the history, it's a massacre. It's almost a genocide over there of how they came in and just usurped the people, wiped out those who resisted, and if you didn't comply, it wasn't the last queen tried to do something at a certain point, and they just either they did away with her or imprisoned her or whatever. She was in the tower.
So, but getting back to the legislation that Shane mentioned.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Right. But defend the guard, it's really wonderful. And I think not only that, I mean, it's sad that we need it, but it's a sort of thing that can unite people. And I believe it's also a way we can reach out to neighbors. And like we say, so we have it'll get reintroduced. We'll have the Republican House of Representatives.
Yeah.
So hold their feet to the fire to make sure they do this. Senator John Lindsay from the west side of the state, he's introduced this in the Senate, but that's going to still be held by the Democrats. But we could reach out to our neighbors who are Democrats and explain this to them and have them put pressure on their Democratic legislators and senators, representatives and senators, to pass this, because it's the right thing to do. And then to go to Governor Whitmer and say, here you go. You took an oath. This is one way to uphold that oath is to not comply with the officers of the Union when they are usurping power. And there are a few areas where it's more important than this. And we even have the support of, right here in Howell, the American Legion Post.
100%.
My friend Bobby, and I probably have a name or somebody, I had to look up his last name, but apparently he's really actively involved there. They got like 1,200 members, and they voted. He said, we're unanimously for this.
100%.
And you go around, and I talked to Dan McKnight. He said the same thing, like in Idaho and the other states, and they got the one fellow from West Virginia who's big on this. I'm gonna Pat, but I can't remember his
Pat
last
McGeehan.
Pat McGeehan, yeah.
McGeehan.
Yeah.
That sounds Lithuanian.
Irishman.
It sounds Lithuanian.
So state after state after state, and in Montana, Leah McCollum and others in Montana.
Okay.
And in Texas, I think they just reintroduce the legislation in Texas. So there could be a groundswell for this. And given what we're hearing from people about, Dr. Paul, the Elon Musk, and Vivek, what they're doing, and this at the state level,
huge.
There's a lot that we should be doing because it's really, these things are supposed to be dealt with at the more localized level, which be the state governments. And no, it doesn't mean we're saying the states have rights. We're saying the states have duties and responsibilities.
Right.
Okay. And to protect our rights. Okay.
Do you think we can get the Democrats getting back to be do you think we can get the Democrats back to not being the party of war? Because it's amazing that in the 60s, 70s, even the 80s, they were the party of peace and no war and everything like that. And
journalism too. And
they are such the war hawks now, along with the rhinos, along with the military. I mean, you almost wonder, is there an ideology on the left, or do they just come down to whoever's going to, I mean, when you study, not Engels, the other guy, Marx, the dude was a loser. He mooched off of everybody around him,
including Engels.
And you're like,
the only thing that
he got some money.
The only thing that they really, the only value they really have is nihilism. So, when, in the 60s, all that flower power bullshit against the war, they just didn't want to go and fight. That's what it came down to. It didn't come down to any principled stand against war. They didn't want to go and get shot at. Now, Vietnam turned out to be based on a pack of lies and, 100%. Of course, blah, blah, blah. So they were right in that regard.
Telling me the Gulf of Tonkin wasn't true?
There was no principled stance
backbone.
There was no backbone behind any of their stances in favor of peace and against the war. So as soon as they 20 years later, now they're professionals, they're working their way through the universities,
they got some money, they become capitalists,
they get some money, and now they're pushing more wars than ever before. They're they're more bourgeois than any of the yuppies that they hated.
So they really haven't changed from being what would Rush call them, the maggot infested, dope smoking liberal. I can't remember his whole diatribe label that he had about that. It was along that lines of they really haven't changed. They're basically losers, and if they get some money, then they continue to be losers and moochers. I mean, Bernie Sanders is actually doing a little bit of a job there in the Senate. Pushing back since they ousted him twice. But this is a dude that talks about the positive benefits of socialism and communism while he owns multi-million-dollar properties and built a whole university to the point the university had to shut down because they basically stole $10 million out of it. I mean, these are the type of people we're dealing with that have never held real jobs. And, you're right. They're on whatever side of the agenda gets them the free ride the easiest.
Hey, real quick, since you mentioned whenever it was formed, I decided to look it up. You said the Coast Guard. By the way, it was about 1790. It was actually founded as the Revenue Cutter Service, or known as the Revenue Marine, actually under recommendation of Secretary Treasury Alexander Hamilton.
Nice.
And they got renamed in 1915 as the current service we know today as.
And then when the original was under the auspices of the Army, and they had the Army Air Corps, and then they switched it to being the Air Force. Yeah,
correct. Yeah,
and broke that branch off. What were you going to say, Dennis?
Okay, a couple of things. Well, just real quickly on the Coast Guard thing.
Yeah,
a great show that was on Netflix. I know Netflix has a lot of bad stuff.
They got some good stuff now and then.
Yeah,
like Cuties. I love that show.
Shut the. Go.
Washington Spies.
Really that is such a
Turn Washington Spies or something like that.
Turn. I'm sorry. Turn Washington.
Yeah, that was great.
With Abraham Woodhull and then Caleb Brewster, and they show at the end when it's all done.
Yeah.
So according to them, that Caleb Brewster and
right,
he was a revenue cutter guy or whatever. With the the sort of thing.
Those are the type of shows where I love it. I'm watching the show, and it's a period documentary, historical. And I'm on IMDb, and I'm on other places, and I'm checking out the actual history versus what they're doing on the show. And I'm like, you got it pretty close. Oh, you kind of got a little bit of artistic license in there, and then you go, you're right on the money here, and so it's pretty cool. It's like, I love the movie The Patriot with Mel Gibson, but his character is really an amalgamation of like two or three guys.
Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox.
Right. but then there was also another person that was the influence on that. So, anyways,
Okay, and then also thing I wanted to say real quickly, that was a great show to do that with also Vikings, but like
I've yet to get into that series,
okay,
but I'm about to.
Yeah,
It's on my list.
But you got to check out too. Yeah, there's some stuff,
Yeah.
but it gets the spirit of it, and
Yeah.
in Ragnar and that sort of. Okay, but going back to the political parties and the Democrats in particular, maybe not so much the left as we think of them, like we're talking about, but the Democrats. Many people pointed out that for a long time the Democrats were the war party, and it was the Republicans saying, this is going to be bad for several reasons. It's going to make we shouldn't. They were called isolationists, some of them, or now we
going back to the days of Robert Taft, correct?
or even earlier than Taft.
Yeah, give me the decades of the eras where you would ascribe to that.
Okay, well, like the World War I era, and Woodrow Wilson was running to keep us out of the war, right?
Right.
And then interestingly, then after he gets reelected, well, then we go into the war, and he had people in his cabinet that said, you can't send munitions and supplies
And not officially be in the war.
And on civilian ships, and then what are the Germans going to do? Oh, okay, that's fine. You go ahead and do that. I mean, they're going to say, wait a minute.
Remember the Maine.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That was
Spanish-American War, but yeah,
down in Cuba.
Right. But so
which pretty much was our blowing up our own stuff or something malfunctioned.
Right. It might have just been a boiler that accidentally might not have been.
Yeah, but then either way, they used it as propaganda
for gaslighting, as
100%.
Well, never let a good disaster go away.
Right.
Thank you, Rom.
So,
appreciate you, Rom.
So for quite a long time, it was the Democrats and the old right, the old American right,
Mm-hmm.
was fighting for a platform of peace, non-interventionism, sound money, free markets, and freedom of expression, and freedom of thought, and freedom of religion, all those sorts of things. You see, and then eventually we had what Murray Rothbard called something, in the post-World War II era, the betrayal of the American right. And the betrayal of the American right is a very significant thing. And so now the old right has been marginalized dramatically.
Yeah, by the likes of William F. Buckley, National Review, all the different entities that took power, all the ones that were in power when Trump came to prominence were the ones that most angrily opposed his coming into power. Even though Trump was, he wasn't old right or Ron Paul or Pat Buchanan, but he had enough of that mojo to where it pissed these people off and they wanted to destroy him. So now that's kind of what has changed the dynamics, put those people on the outs, and now a lot of the people who have the old right kind of thinking, the Pat Buchanan, Ron Paul sort of line of thinking, are much more within the mainstream of the MAGA party than they were the neocon Bush era Republican party.
You think Trump even formulated? I just from the outside, I don't think Trump actually ever formulated a political agenda or policy. I think he was a businessman. He wrote The Art of the Deal. He wanted, when you go through that and then you watch his life, it wasn't just when you think of The Art of the Deal from the outside. And then of course it's a take on The Art of War, that dynamic, but he was always about that win-win solution. But no matter what, he was going to win. But he never went into a negotiation thinking he was going to screw somebody over and take advantage of them. He went into it and go, let's find the best solution for both of us. That's good for me and can be good for you. But
and if that doesn't work, I'll do my other. I'll come up with some other scheme.
100%. But I think when you do that, and then you look at his often overlooked or ignored or even lied about altruism, the amount of just the people that come out of the woodworks and go, I work for a Trump organization, and he'd walk down during Christmas and look for the people that he knew needed it the most and hand them twice the bonus that they gave other people. And many times it was the minorities. They couldn't find with the Trump-Russia collusion and all this other shit, they couldn't find legitimate people other than a couple disgruntled people that got fired off the Celebrity Apprentice. They couldn't find anybody legitimate out of the thousands of people that have worked for him that could say a negative word, let alone fault him or say he was a bad. Now, of course, there were subcontractors for some of the projects that came out and said things, of course, because you probably did a shitty job and he fired you off that job.
Or didn't pay you,
or withheld payment because you didn't.
I'm not going to pay him for that.
Yeah, well, of course they're going to be disgruntled.
Yeah.
but they couldn't find anybody. I don't think he actually had a political ideology other than how do I do the best job that I can do, make really good money, and empower the people that are alongside of me in that endeavor.
His really only one issue was deals. I can get better deals. NAFTA, stupid deal. I could do better on a deal.
Exactly.
And these guys are bozos. I could do better than them.
Right. And I think now he's become so much more savvy in the political dynamics, but he's still looking for, he's calling up G and he's going, look, when I put these tariffs on you, you're going to get screwed over. Do you want a good deal? You want something that's going to benefit you and your country and your people? Or do you want to keep going forward with this where you're screwing us over because you're not going to screw us over anymore? This isn't happening anymore. And I think that, to me, you guys tell me, I think he came in as a true businessman with the best, I would say the best honorable. There's businessmen that are crooked that'll screw you over, but a businessman that's going to get the best deal for himself, but also wants his subcontractors to make. When I encounter those type of businessmen, that they go, look, I want a good deal from you. I know you got to I know you need to make money. You need to take care of your stuff, but don't charge me 4 times the amount. Charge me a good rate, and we'll make the deal right now. I think that's his philosophy, or it has been his philosophy. And then he had to adjust or incorporate more and more political dynamics because it's a different animal. In business, your bottom line is, can I make a profit on this thing, or at least come out without a loss and put out a good product, put out a good hotel, in his case, put out a good casino, put out a good thing. In politics, they could give 2 shits sometimes whether it's good for the people, whether it's good for the economy, whether it's good for foreign policy, whether it's good for any of these things. They go, do I get another trip to Cancun on somebody else's dime because they're lobbying me, and I'll vote for it, and I'll figure out a way to justify it to my constituency so they vote for me again.
Yeah. I have a question for about the tariffs.
Did I leave you speechless, Dennis?
Yeah, well, you brought up the tariffs issue. So I had a question. And then you mentioned about people charging.
Mm-hmm.
So is it better if the people charge you a higher price or a lower price?
For me, it's better if they charge me a lower price.
Okay, all right. So in that case, do you benefit if the government says, well, we're going to put a tax or a fee on top of that, make you pay the fee as well as what they were going to charge you? Is that a better thing or a worse thing?
On its face, it would be a worse thing. But under the surface, when you realize that the fees I'm being charged are equivalent or on par with what I would be charged if that industry was here back in America and we had Americans doing those jobs and had those wages. Now we're doing cutthroat wages in another country, and so they're selling it to us at a cheaper rate or cheaper amount. But what that means is we're empowering a despotic country somewhere else to exploit their own people, or despotic corporations in a foreign country to use either slave labor or lowered wages labor. And we're benefit. I would rather pay a higher cost across the board for products than know that I don't have one, but I know that an Apple Watch or an Apple phone is being built by slave labor. I'd rather have it built here and know that the price is on par, whether I get it from there or get it from here, and it incentivizes those companies to come back and build it here, and also then empowers our workforce to be back here, or to be, have these better jobs here. Why are we building all these things? Why am I'm wearing a pair of jeans that were made in Vietnam? You can't make jeans here in America, but this is the company, they design them here in America, but then they get the cheaper price over there. I want them made here. You can't find a mug or a glass. I listened to Steven Crowder. They buy their mugs from China. He said, I couldn't find a single company in America to make a freaking coffee mug. He said, well, we get them over here, then we have them engraved, and then we ship them out to you. He's like, dude, I'm just being upfront with you. So I think from that dynamic, I want to pay the lowest price. I think that's wise. That's being that. But is the lower price a result of exploitation in foreign countries? And we have a more robust economy here that has a higher wage level, and that if we brought those jobs back here, that those things would balance out. And I don't think that Trump has any designs on those tariffs being long-term. I think they're a lever. I think they're a tactic to get those jobs back here and then have them balance out. He did it with steel. He did it with some of the HVAC companies that were manufacturing overseas, and he they were about to, and they stopped them from doing that. You've got the automotive plants that are trying to go to Mexico with a China-built plant, stopping that. I think the majority of the automotive industry would love to keep those plants open here. Does it mean it's a higher wage to make that product? Does that mean that the sticker price is going to be high? Well, we're already facing that high wage. They're not adjusting those wages or those prices on those stickers a lot of times once they ship them back with or without a tariff. So I concede on the surface level 100% that a lower price overall is a benefit to the individual. But putting the tariffs on, and I love Trump's argument, is the one and only time that we've had a true surplus in this country where we had to put a blue ribbon committee together was 1870 something or 1880 something. And it was all or predominantly based on tariffs for these other countries. And as much as you can't find that historical fact throughout our, prominent in our documentation today, you also can't find anybody who was pissed off about paying a little bit higher wages, because I guarantee you it was on par with what we were already paying for goods and services across the board. It just happened to be that the ones coming from over here were now at the same price as the ones coming from within. And I think that's my take on it. You guys can.
And I'll also kind of add to that is that, I agree with what you're saying. Obviously, from a libertarian perspective, the tariffs, add inefficiencies to the market and can impact different goods coming in, make them higher prices. But with China, I think what they're doing is very strategic, and we're going to get America dependent on all of this, slave-made, cheap stuff,
100%.
so that they're dependent on this for their economy to run, so we can have them by the balls.
Correct.
That's what they've been doing all these years. They've been giving us these great deals, but it comes at a price. And when you saw during COVID-19, China is in charge of manufacturing our medicine, manufacturing our PPO, manufacturing stuff that we will need during an emergency. And then suddenly, we are caught with our pants down. We are scrambling. We are panicking.
Right.
So I think that there is an important thing for a nation to be self-sufficient, a nation to be able to create and make everything that it needs to survive. And, once you are able to, have you're able to, make everything you have to survive, you're able to harvest your natural resources, then you can come to the table to other nations. You hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Then you can come to other nations and be like, oh, here's what we have. Do you have anything that could help us?
Right.
Then you can come to kind of a bilateral deal that would help both nations. And I think we can all agree here that things like the TPP and NAFTA, a globalist trade zone where you're dealing with thousands of pages of regulations that prevent national sovereignty and create an economic zone that helps massive corporations, and the people don't have a say. And technically there's no tariffs, but everything is designed just to take money from the people and funnel it upwards to corporations.
Right.
I think we can all agree that that's bad. Dennis?
Well, let me point one thing out before we go to Dennis. Just think about what Trump did with France, and he said, "Look, he's like, you're going to take our appliances over in France. I think it was appliances and maybe vehicles, something like that. Definitely appliances." And he said, "You're going to take our appliances over there." And they said, "No, we're not." He goes, "Okay, I'm going to put 100% tariff on your wine coming over here." It was like 5 minutes. 5 minutes later, he gets the call back and he says, "Okay, we'll take your appliances." I don't think he truly wants to put the tariffs on. I think the tariff is the big stick that gets us to a balanced trade policy without the NAFTA, without the
TPP.
TPP, without those things. Dennis, sorry, I wanted to get that point in.
No, see, So it's interesting as you go through this discussion. It does get complex. There's a lot of ramifications and implications, and cross currents, because we've had so much political management of the economy and political management of trade, and even these other deals. They aren't free trade deals; they're just politically managed trade deals.
That's a myth.
And so, one of the things that's interesting though is as you mentioned, Jeremy, you say, well, these people overseas are being exploited. So that reminds me of some of these. And even had some public service announcements. I thought it was kind of interesting because they were real thought provokers about people. And I don't think it was aimed directly at what we're talking about here, but I think it resonates or echoes this a little bit.
Okay.
About people that are working at jobs where, oh my gosh, they're getting paid less than Americans are. We should demand that company overseas or here at home raise how much they pay the people. Or child labor was another one. I remember this was one of the. It was supposed to be a thought provoking thing that whatever this group was that was putting this out.
Right.
They said, well, child labor, that's bad. So if you go to a foreign country and say, we're not going to support your factories that make whatever it is that have child labor, we're not buying that anymore. And then these guys say, okay, well, then the plant goes out of business.
Right.
From the standpoint of the exploited worker, are they better off or worse off now?
Oh, I'm 100% with you.
And in China, there's places, people who went to work at sweatshops. Oftentimes, these sweatshops have a giant long line of people outside the door waiting to work there, wanting to work there, wanting to have that opportunity, even if they're getting paid pennies, because they can work at a sweatshop for years, and then they'll be able to squirrel away enough money to where they're able to put themselves through school, and then suddenly they're able to get from the bottom of the barrel, poor peasant, up to educated into the workforce and better their lives. Here it's so much easier because we have a free society. In China, it's so much more difficult with all the the repression and the population size. It's so much more difficult, and just being able to work at a sweatshop is just a way to advance themselves and get forward into society. And as cruel as it may seem, that's the first step toward like we had child labor here 120 years ago or whatever. That was the first step in a developing economy toward creating enough wealth to where child labor wasn't needed.
And I get that in a society that's developing and moving in a veins of freedom. And I'll tell you, I used to support some missionaries out of Haiti, and they would come here and they said, the bleeding hearts came to our country, and they said, we got to get rid of the the child labor, and they shut down the factories. And he says, so now we have no jobs.
Now we're all eating dirt cookies.
Right. But the lowered wages, they don't ever account when they go over there and talk about, you need to pay your people more. In the ones that are developing, that are coming up, they go, wait a minute, the pay should be on par with the living expenses and stuff like that, as it always should be. It's like what your society somewhat dictates. I'm not for a minimum wage in every. I'm very extremely libertarian on that. I don't know if that's the right category, but I'm not for a minimum wage. I never paid any of the guys that worked for me construction wise a minimum wage. I paid them what their skills were, and it was always way above minimum wage, because minimum wage was a joke to me. You're going to arbitrarily set this. And I think that any business that would pay you below what an honorable wage is for a day's work should go out of business for having shitty workers.
But if you look at the minimum wage, let's say, I don't know the exact minimum wage, let's say it's $15.
Yeah.
That seems like a lot compared to what it used to be maybe 10, 15 years ago. But if you look at the purchasing power of the dollar, maybe 100 years ago, someone might have been paid $1 an hour.
Right.
And that dollar would be worth what? $25 today?
Right.
So the idea that people were underpaid then, not necessarily. The dollar got them so much more.
That was the argument with the gold standard is look, gold's what at 20, is it at 2,500, 2,400 right now?
2650 roughly.
2650. So it keeps going up.
Bitcoin 100,000 for one of them.
Right. And we're going to get into that.
Yes,
Dennis won't be able to speak out, but
we'll have to mute Dennis. So.
But the dynamic of it is that, and I love this, a number of really good economists have talked about it. They said, okay, so, talked about in the Constitution, nobody, I think the minimum was $20 or something like that in the Constitution, that you could be held for bail. Otherwise it was excessive. And I'm like, dude, the average traffic ticket's $150, $200, but the point being is that what you could buy in gold then you can buy in gold now the equivalent. If you went and you bought a $2,500, a $2,650, right? If you brought in one ounce of gold, right? Back then, you'd got a custom pair of leather shoes, awesome leather dress shoes, and a very nice suit and a hat and a whole whatever went with it. You can get the same thing. You can walk into a great great suit shop, and you can get custom tailored and all the same thing you would have gotten back then. So you're exactly right. What you got paid for $1 a day back, 150 years ago, is equivalent today because of the debauching of our currency, the devaluing of our currency. But the gold dynamic shows you the true value, the true balance of it as far as wages. So they keep raising our wages. They keep devaluing the currency, but the intrinsic value of things and the intrinsic value of the worker continue to stay on par by and large for the most part. And I think in these, as far as for me with the tariffs, I like the idea of the tariff because I know it's not a long-term solution. I have the board of commissioners, various commissioners either on the show or talk with them. And I asked them, what is the number one revenue stream, or what are the top 3 revenue streams for our county? And the first one is property taxes. And I have a fundamental, huge problem with property taxes. I think that is a complete affront to the Constitution and the founding fathers. They almost wrote it in, the right to, life, liberty, and property. And so to have property taxes being at the forefront, but how do we transition from that?
But do we, if we had, okay, in my opinion, just ideally there'd be no taxes, but if we were able to get rid of property taxes, get rid of income taxes, and then have permanent tariffs and a sales tax that, applied in a certain way to try to, more sales taxes on unhealthy foods versus less sales taxes on healthy foods. People below a certain wage cap getting rebates for sales taxes that they pay, stuff like that, would go into it. There'd have to be a lot. That'd be kind of sophisticated.
Right.
But if you were able to put in a sales tax system like that, and you were able to put in permanent tariffs and get rid of the property taxes and the income taxes, I feel like we would be monumentally more free than we are right now.
Oh, 100%. And I think that's what I'm looking at with the tariffs. Is the tariffs are, to me, have never seemed as Trump's been espousing them. You look at the balance of it. He's bringing in Elon and Vivek to downsize hugely the size of government. He's bringing in RFK to make America healthy again, to get rid of all this garbage. Well, not only is he going to get rid of it, the minute you start getting us back to a healthy diet, our healthcare costs are going to drop exponentially, which is going to precipitate across the board for a whole lot of other things. But you're also going to re-regulate. Look at this. Why do we need a regulator walking into an Amish farm in Pennsylvania and telling him he can't sell raw milk to somebody who wants to buy raw milk? It's a free exchange. Why are you involved? And what's your salary? Go get a real job. Why are you involved? So you downsize that size of government. You also correct these health. And it came out. They were talking about it. They're like, why can't we go and buy raw milk? You used to have a literal milkman, and then the jokes coming out of it that the third kid looked like the milkman, but you used to have the milkman delivering fresh raw milk to your house on a daily basis because it wouldn't keep on the shelves, because we didn't have this boiling process where we destroy the natural enzymes. And people go, I'm lactose intolerant. No, if you drank raw milk, you wouldn't have any problems digesting, because the natural bacteria, the natural flora in it would cause it to digest perfectly in your body. It's proven. But they don't want that. They want to regulate it. They want to make it artificial. We want to do 3D printed meat, from Bill Gates, all of these things. And I see it as tariff is one of these dynamics within that whole plan of going, you know what, we're going to put some tariffs on some companies. I mean, look at Trump. Is he really serious about putting 300% on some of these countries? No, it's a lever. It's a tactic. He even
said it's just a big number.
It's just a big number, right? And he doesn't, when he's looking at it, he's like, what's the number of the tariff that's going to get you to move over to the place where, let's say, something cost you $80. And now we put it on there, and by the time it gets here, it's $82 because of a $2 tariff on that, whatever the percentage would be. How easy is that to absorb? You know, we hear 100%, 200%, even 300%. He's pontificated. I don't ever think that's a realistic thing. I think small tariffs, it is basically the same line as a national sales tax, but it's on goods coming from outside the country before they ever get here. I think that's reasonable, but then again, it's gotta be balanced out. Are we reducing the size of government? You reduce the size of government and you reduce the amount of waste that we have, this with Doge, the way that they're going to come in with Elon. You watch the amount of money that we spend. I mean, we know this, you guys know this, that they every single year they come up for their budget. And if they didn't spend the money that they spent last year, they get their budget cut. So these organizations, these bureaucrats try to waste as much money as they can so that they get the same or normal.
Mm-hmm.
Half the time when they tell you that we're reducing the size of government, it just means that we're reducing the size of the increase that is inherent.
We reduced the size of the projected increase from 19% to 15%. We reduced government by 4%.
Right. We had a budget last year. This is not a government statistic, but we had a budget last year of $100,000. We're projected to need a budget of $120,000 next year. We'll take $118,000. So you reduced it. Yes, we reduced the amount of money we needed. No, you didn't. You increased it by $18,000. No, we reduced it because we were going to ask for 20 more than we had last year. These are the games that they play. And I think that having a businessman coming in there and being able to just speak plainly to the people. I love, we had earlier, Senator Rumstead in here, and he was talking about these. There was a GOP chair years and years ago that just screwed up horrible. It was whenever it was, the 50s or 60s, something like that. Just lost the House, lost the Senate, lost the governor, everything like that. And he went around and he didn't call them fireside chats, but he went around and he met with people and just let him either share their ideas or rip him up one side and down the other for the piss poor job that he did. And he said, that's where we need to get back to, is having these conversations with people, whether they agree with us or disagree with us. And I look at a person like Trump, and I look at Vivek, and I look at Elon, and I look at RFK. These guys are extremely articulate. You watch any one of the podcasts or interviews that they've done with non-old school media, they're phenomenal. These guys are, they just like right now, they're sharing ideas, they're articulate, and they're not rehearsed. They're not planned, but they're core. They're things that they believe in their core. They're not foreign to them. They're not something that they're pulling out of the ether and, I'm going to laugh now because I don't know what I'm going to actually say. You know, these are real rooted things. Good?
I think we're good. Yeah. Anything else?
No, go, Dennis.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, just
finish up on the tariff thing, or
yes.
Yeah.
But my observation has been, just in studying this, I think back even in the 19th century when they had a big
surplus.
I'd say battles over tariffs.
Oh, battles over tariffs, yeah.
And so what you had was the politically powerful manufacturers wanted a high tariff.
Mm-hmm.
The less politically powerful agricultural, small town people didn't want that. They said we're getting ripped off. And what happened, and this particularly leading up to the 1860s, and this caused a lot of hard feelings in the country, was tariff revenue was going towards what they would call public improvements. And they were doing a lot of these, in the northern states and in areas where these manufacturers had their facilities and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So people in the South said, well, wait a minute, we're subsidizing these other people through these tariffs. And now we want to sell our goods overseas. We want to sell our agricultural product, cotton being one of them, but not the only one, So it's interesting to think about, because then you have all these businesses in this country that will maybe buy some products from overseas and then resell them on the international market. And you say, well, could there be some either unforeseen or unremarked upon consequences from something that, you say, well, we're not going to do it the way they did it back then, because that was clearly a rapacious approach. This is going to be different this time. And I just wonder, given history and given the nature, and yes, Trump is a different sort. There's no doubt about that. And it may well be that he'll just be able to threaten them, threaten these other countries with this. But then the other point that I read from so many that look at it, I said, well, the person that pays the tariff, if you're buying a good and the price is up, you're the one paying it. And they said, well, yeah, but then maybe you'll stop buying from them.
Right.
Well, there's still a cost to that. And I just wonder about all the ramifications of all this thing. Some of which we can't see. Even if we had this, let's say we had this situation that all of a sudden, you know what? We're not going to make it. We're building up all these plants, and they're not going to have them overseas. Could that have some impacts that we'd say, well, it turns out there were some negatives to that we didn't foresee. Now, on the other hand, you say, well, we got this huge the income tax, the monetary inflation. If we cut the size of government and we could do it at a low tariff rate, that might work. And I actually have been reading a couple guys I think are pretty good free market type economists who have said, I think one of them is Dr. Peter St. Onge. I think that's how his name's pronounced, Onge.
Okay.
He seemed to be in favor of it, or thought it might work. But he said that one of the problems he saw was, I mean, how much revenue could you get really? You're going to have to really cut back the size and scope of government. Which, well, that'd be great. And then others have said, well, gee, yeah, we put this tariff thing in, but maybe we got to get rid of the other tax levels first. Because what typically happens with government, they go, here's what we're going to do. This is the trade we're going to make. Then we find, oh, we got the negative half of the trade. And then they just forgot about the other part. They said, well, I'm sorry, we just can't afford to do that. Right. So there's all these different things that.
All the dynamics.
Right.
Maybe tariffs could give us a new war for Southern independence.
Well, wasn't it Boston or somebody said when goods don't cross borders, armies do. And they were really, in fact, it's interesting, back in England in the mid 19th century.
Right.
So you had the Manchester Liberals, Codman and Bright.
Okay.
And they had started an anti-corn league law. Well, anti-corn law league.
Okay.
What were the corn laws? Well, they had really high tariffs on corn.
Okay.
To benefit English growers, apparently, or something of that nature.
Right.
And what they ended up finding was, they were getting people were starving. And I'd say, well, it's not quite that bad here. We're not talking about doing that, but it's an interesting historical episode. That what ended up happening was they got rid of the corn laws. Then they went for either zero or I think they actually went for zero tariff. They said let's just have free trade. Well, oh my God, what happened to England? That must have been terrible. They must have exported all their industry. Actually, England had tremendous prosperity. It could be that situations are different and all that, but I just think there's a lot to these things.
It's not a cut and dry. It's not a black and white thing.
So I think these are interesting things to consider.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it is interesting. Trump certainly gets their attention. And even though we could go back and forth and argue about who really pays it, he does get reactions from others. And I've even seen some libertarian people say, wow, even his negotiation with the lady that's now the head of the Mexican government.
Yeah.
That was pretty quick.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's all interesting to consider as we ponder what to do next.
Yeah. And then also look at it. So he's talking about tariffs, but then think about that. He said, within 6 months, he's going to lower all these costs across the board. And he's one quote unquote politician that I actually believe will be able to lower a lot of costs. Look at, he's going to open up back the oil drilling. He's going to open up. We were completely independent and exporting to 15 major countries when he was president, all of our oil without touching it. Biden shuts that down day one. We're back on, $3 or $4 a gallon, depending on the state. You could be up to $5, $6 a gallon. I think you put a tariff on some goods and services coming over, but then you're back to $1.80, $1.60 a gallon for gas. That's the type of balance that I see. You reduce the size of government. You do this, I'll ask you this. What are the constitutionally allowed revenue streams? From my perspective, it's just the coinage of money and tariffs. Are those the?
Well, then they did pass the 16th Amendment. Now some people question about.
Yeah,
was it
midnight on Christmas Eve
or whatever supposedly? But putting that aside, you say since there was an amendment, and all the money's supposed to be gold and silver, right? So this, but everything you look at, you can say,
yeah,
the Constitution is avoided or ignored where the politicians and their patrons can get away with it.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And then so then you get there. How do you cut the Gordian knot? And actually, you raised a great point there, Jeremy, about what Trump said is we got to reduce the cost of doing business in this country and make it less own, and you got to make it less onerous for somebody to be a startup and to compete against the big boys.
Yeah. Remove the regulation.
I think the
Why is-
point is, but if you look at the United States government, look at the amount of regulation, the amount of taxation, the bureaucracy, getting rid of it sounds like a great idea. But how do you even go about that? I think you have to innovate your way out of it, like through Bitcoin, like what El Salvador is doing.
I see that.
now.
I also think of where's the guy with the crazy hair?
Malay
Malay.
in Argentina.
Malay in Argentina. He's like in fuego. Is it in fuego?
I will cut you.
What's his phrase?
A Fiora or something? Or
I thought it was.
That's-
Fuego means on fire, so it's not.
I
that.
just remember he had like little Velcro
I
things
thought-
with every
he's like-
bureaucracy.
but
It's like, I remove you.
He's like,
I
you're done.
remove you. You're
You're
gone.
done.
You're
You're done.
gone. Yeah.
And he's just wiping them out. I think it's been bandied about what you do. I think you give. Listen, I got buddies that work for GM. There were guys on business trips doing testing or doing whatever. Okay, they come back to the hotel. Their card's shut off. The corporate card is shut off. The corporate email is shut off. The corporate phone is shut off. They have no way to communicate, and they have to pull a credit card out of their own wallet to get back home because they got fired while they're on the business trip for the company that just fired them. Oh yeah, I got buddies that they're like I play hockey with. They're like, yeah, did you hear this next round of cuts? It was X amount of thousands of guys that got cuts.
And then you wonder why CEOs are getting their brains blown out on the streets.
Well, true. But so I look at that and I empathize with all people out there. But the reality is, listen, if we kept the buggy whip industry valid, even though we stopped needing the abundance of buggy whips, then we would, perpetuate that. So I understand what you're saying.
Hey, I want to make buggy whips great again. Okay.
Let's make buggy whips, but that's my thing. Is like, you know what? If your job was useless to begin with, you need to be fired, and then you need to go become a useful person.
And you can find somewhere else in the
100%.
economy where you'll be helpful.
Lincoln said that, listen, America will never be overthrown from within as long as this prevails. 75% of the people make their own living, and the other 25% are working for them on their way to making their own living. The vast majority of this country was either agrarian or industrial as far as the dynamic of being innovators, being entrepreneurs. That was one of the freedoms in the foundation. You can't today just go get a piece of land and build your log cabin and harvest the things around you and hunt and not have to interact with anybody. But they could 100 years ago.
Well, maybe you could at Bitcoin Beach in El Salvador.
This is true. Are we going? When are we going? You were down there.
Put up the. Let's go through it. Let's do it.
I'm going to go through it. Dennis, any final thoughts on that before we go through the Bitcoin, which you'll have to.
I will recuse myself from that. But yes, just one final thing. There's a really wonderful movie to watch, looking back at the old days, called Life with Father.
Life with Father.
And I'm trying. And if you look it up, it had. I'm drawing. We could look it up, but the actor and the actress, they're very famous. It's got a great cast. In fact, Elizabeth Taylor's in this. This is one of her earlier shows. It's a very young girl.
Okay.
So they're in New York, and father is probably a Republican Wall Streeter. But then there's a point at which the mother, they're going back and forth, and she talks about going to these meetings, and she listens to this person explains why the high tariffs are bad, and the father says, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Oh yeah, all that does is," and she goes through all the negative consequences of the high tariffs. She does a great job explaining it.
Okay.
And you wouldn't expect to hear that in this movie, but it's really a great movie. Life with Father. It was
Life with Father,
and it's back in the 1880s.
Okay.
Is where this takes place.
All right, Shane.
Okay, cool.
Take us away with the Bitcoin stuff, buddy.
So yeah, just you look on there. You look at Good Life Real Estate Consulting. When I went to Bitcoin Beach in El Salvador just a couple weeks ago. I've been networking with a lot of Bitcoin enthusiasts in mid-Michigan, and they connected me with the guy you see there. He's the featured guy in this. I met with him in El Zante.
Okay.
And he basically gave a real estate presentation on Bitcoin Beach and the what's going on there and how it's basically ground zero for the development of this country. El Salvador has a very bad reputation. because it was besieged by narco gangs. MS-13.
Yeah, it was horrible.
That's the El Salvadorian gang.
Mm-hmm.
They basically had control of the entire country for decades, the murder capital of the world. But then Bukele, the president right now, El Presidente.
You have to pronounce it correctly, otherwise,
Nayib Bukele.
I know if you did,
Yes,
but I'm saying if you don't pronounce it correctly, then
they'll shoot you on sight in this country, allegedly.
Allegedly.
No, they won't.
No, I was going to say that. I was going to say then Max Kaiser will come and hunt you down.
Max will come
down and hunt you down and make you.
You're a Kaiser. Of course, you're a Kaiser guy. Bukele, he came in, he eliminated the drug gangs, he instituted mass arrests.
Okay.
When you go there now, you'll notice that there's a lot of militarized police all over the country, and police state. That's bad. Police state America. We don't want that. I agree. If it's done by the wrong ruler, but
Right.
all these military police, if there's anything going on that's bad, and the people come and
So these are all listings of houses that are available down there.
Yeah. So Good Life El Salvador has real estate listings.
Okay.
If you want to get involved in El Salvador, this is the place to start. The real estate property values, like a lot of these are beachfront properties. You'll get it for maybe $100,000-$200,000 right on the most picturesque beach you can ever imagine.
So this is not like Mexico, where you're not allowed to own within there's 30 miles or something like that.
No. They want you to come in and own it. Like they want investment. Like I was down, and I'll show the actual pictures from my vacation in a minute.
Okay.
But I was down there at Bitcoin Beach, El Zante, and we were down there on the beach. Maybe it's 1 p.m. Maybe there's a dozen people at the beach, and half of them are me and my friends, and we're just looking around. We're like,
"It's the most gorgeous beach.
It's the most beautiful beach, maybe the best waves in the world.
Yeah.
One of the most beautiful beaches in the world. Looks like, because it's a volcanic beach.
Is it the black sand?
Black sands, and it looks like Hawaii. It looks like Hawaii. So we're in this paradise. We looked around. We're like, there's nothing. I mean, there were like a couple of small little, older, restaurants and
right.
hotels on the beach, but it was just criminally underdeveloped. So people are going to be coming in and developing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be you. That can be you right now. I mean, imagine if you were in, if you traveled to Miami in 1890.
Okay.
And you're just walking down the beach and there's so little there. Go down.
I want to see your photo. Where were your photos?
Right, no, it might be. It's up. Yeah, my bad. So you imagine if you go in 1890 to Miami Beach, and you're just like, this is the most beautiful beach ever. Yep. And there's nothing there, and you had an opportunity to invest, and you had an opportunity to be involved in that. There is me with Roman Martinez. He's one of the founders of Bitcoin Beach. He runs Good Life El Salvador. He's the real estate guru down there. He will be happy to bring you around Bitcoin Beach and show you exactly what you can get involved in if you want to invest, if you want to, change your life for the better.
Was he offended at all by your American flag tank top?
Well, here's what happened. Because it was a weird thing where literally I just happened to be coming for a political conference where it was people from all across the world, mostly Europe, but a handful of us from America too, went down there for a political conference, and their big Bitcoin conference had just ended the day I got down there.
Okay.
So there was still a handful of Bitcoin people down there. So they did one Bitcoin real estate seminar at Bitcoin Beach one of the days I was down there. So I was able to bring like 5 or 6 of my political conference people. Opposite way. I was able to bring some of my people down there to do the real estate conference and learn about exactly what's going on down there. That's me at the volcanic beach.
It looks like you.
Where the waves are hitting in the background. That's Bitcoin Beach right there.
Wow.
And we went and we were eating at a resort. There's Bitcoin Beach as well. We were eating.
It doesn't look very curved to me. It looks kind of like the horizon's flat. I'm just saying.
Oh, it's because it's AI. It's all a scam. No, it's just the most beautiful area. The waves are so. It's apparently if you love surfing, it's like the best place in the world to surf.
Mhm.
But
the sharks.
I didn't see any. I didn't get my balls bit off, so
Yeah.
I'm assuming the sharks are
Your
good.
testicles are intact. You're good to
My
go.
testicles are still
Intact.
still going.
There you go.
Yeah, so it's a beautiful area. If anything, just go down there and see it. $57 a night for a room on Bitcoin Beach.
Okay.
So
Is that cash money?
no, they accept card. They accept.
No, I'm saying $57.
$57 US,
US.
and they accept US dollars. US they're dollarized, so they accept either US or Bitcoin, US dollars or Bitcoin down there.
What's a flight down there?
Like $500, $600
Round trip?
Pretty good, huh?
Dude, where are we going?
That's the whole point. I'm bringing this up. I want more people to come. I want people to have this opportunity.
I think our last cruise was like $4,000 or something like that.
You would, I mean, if you wanted,
it was Crown Royal.
if you wanted to go to Bitcoin Beach and spend a week there, I don't think you'd spend more than $1,500. And hang on,
what's the food? I mean, what's the food? You got some food included?
Okay, well, one of the guys who was showing us around, he took us down to. We were driving this dirt road for like 10 minutes, and we go to the edge of this cliff, and that's where you saw me with the volcanic rock behind me.
Okay,
let's go back to that picture.
Okay.
I went to, this was Surf City. This wasn't Bitcoin Beach. This was Surf City, which is like 10 minutes down the road from Bitcoin Beach.
Okay.
Yeah, and so this was our backdrop, and we went to a restaurant right on the edge of this cliff where the waves were hitting the volcanic rock. Went down a dirt road for like 10 minutes. We saw, the immense poverty there of, the people, living in tents, living in, sheet metal. We drive down there and we get to the end of this cliff, and there's 3 or 4 dirt floor restaurants where they had the freshest seafood you could ever imagine. And it only costs like $8 an entree.
Probably lobster, shrimp, and...
Well, I got the mahi-mahi ceviche.
Oh, nice.
And it was incredible. Incredible. So,
yeah.
So that's where we went. And, if people who want to get involved in El Salvador, you're bringing more wealth and more prosperity to these people. They're going to be little by little. Wait. Nice. I never knew Dennis was that ruthless, but now I know.
Now you know. I had my goalie reflexes knocked out of the air, so I didn't play tonight. Continue.
Oh, yeah. So if you're bringing prosperity down to them, you're bringing a better way of life down to them.
Right. Is this the new Belize? Is this the new Belize?
Costa Rica, the new Belize? I think it has the potential to be better than all that, because you have a Bitcoin sector where it's going to be the next Silicon Valley as well. So it's not just going to be.
Are they putting in the infrastructure for mining?
Yeah, I mean they're show the. Did you show the amount of Bitcoin reserve? Because they're the first country to have a strategic Bitcoin reserve. There it is. Yes.
Yeah.
There it is right there. So they have $603 million worth of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And the Bitcoin's at 100,000 right now. Imagine when the Bitcoin's at 500,000. Imagine when it's at 1 million. They're using volcanic energy from their volcanoes to mine Bitcoin.
That's cool.
So they're constantly adding to it. They're buying it with the money they do have, and they're just constantly adding to this strategic Bitcoin reserve.
Yeah. So
this is going to go from, millions of dollars to many billions of dollars in the very near future.
That's because it's built in. It's intrinsic with Bitcoin and built in that you can never increase the supply.
Yep. So they'll always have it.
Correct.
They'll always have it.
Which is interesting to me. I was listening to somebody talk about it. I can't tell you who it was. Might even been Jay Dyer, but he doesn't dive into that a lot. But anyway, somebody was talking about it the other day, and they said, we talk about the dollar and they can just print more money, or they can now it's just a computer tabulation. They just add a few more zeros, and we're just increasing the money supply. And he said, but most people don't calculate it or realize that unmined gold is exactly this. It's not exactly the same, but it's on par with that. If you increase the gold supply, to a lesser extent than fiat currency, you would lower
You'll inflate it.
you'll inflate the gold
But just
amount.
just the cost of dragging it out of the earth kind of
Balances it all.
prevents that.
But then he didn't say this, but then I was thinking about it. I'm like, well, then if you equate that to De Beers, right? We know they have thousands of diamonds just in vaults in the basement, because if they release the diamonds that God has intrinsically put in the earth, they should be commonplace.
Yeah.
And yet they want to inflate the value of it. And so Bitcoin is one of the only ones that has an absolute dollar amount or absolute coin amount that you're never going to that can never be increased, because
it's a fixed number of coin amount.
Right.
And once those amounts are mined, there's no more. But then it's infinitely divisible.
Correct.
So if it'll be whatever there's I think a Satoshi is considered like one, I don't know the exact number, but 1/10,000th of one Bitcoin. And at a certain point, one Satoshi will be worth 1 cent. Then that one Satoshi will be worth $1.
Right.
And then you can even go even more divisible down from Satoshi.
And that is a complete opposite of the systems, because it's from that perspective, it's not a devaluing of the currency. It's a from the idea of being inflated. It's not inflated. It's more empowered. It's worth more. And therefore, because it's actually worth more, your buying power increases versus debauching the currency, your buying power decreases, And I think I'm looking at it and like, so the interesting thing is we had a specific laptop, and I think we had about 100 Bitcoin at one time. Computer got lost, and nobody can remember the 8, whatever it is.
1/100 million.
1/100 million?
Satoshi.
Okay. But we if my buddy Bill could figure out what those are, we bought like when Bitcoin was like next to nothing.
Well, you should maybe find a hacker who can hack into the computer.
But you got to have those 8 unique.
Oh, for the Bit wallet.
The wallet. That's the problem.
Oh yeah, we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
100.
Like, dude. Well, yeah, just before the crash and after the crash, we were well, I was driving a Bentley, so I mean, that tell you. There was a
no
few
wonder
thi-
you
there was a
built
few
this
things.
fucking man cave.
Dude, I keep telling people, I'm like, everybody walks in and they're like, what do you do for a living? I'm like, it has nothing to do with what I do for a living. This is the blessing of the Lord for me. The Lord supplies the materials, and I do most of the work in here. I have help from time to time, but the vast majority of it I do myself. And I know how to. This table that we're sitting at right now is pretty cool, right? I built it out of wood, out of a job. I knocked down a whole house, and I took this wood was part of the house. And when they knocked it down, I'm like, well, we're not going to throw this. This is great maple wood. I took it, and I'm like, I'll build something out of my wood shop. And I did. And so as people walk in and they're like, wow, that's a gorgeous table. And I go, yeah, I built it. You look at the trim on the walls and stuff like that. This is all stuff that I can just start pointing out everything that I've salvaged wood and done this and created this and done that. And then I'm blessed, I'm blessed beyond any job. The Lord blesses me. And, but that's sowing and reaping.
But also all the people like you and others who have lost tons of Bitcoin. There's so many examples. The lost Bitcoin just makes the existing Bitcoin that much more valuable.
How much does anybody know how much is because it's a blockchain and nobody knows?
Oh, how much is available to be mined?
No, how much is lost? How many people have?
I have no idea, but a shitload has been lost. From people just losing their keys to these I remember that reading about a whole story about some guy in Canada who had he ran like a Coinbase type platform for Bitcoin. He mysteriously dies.
Yeah,
and
it turns out this asshole on his computer was the only one who knew the fucking password for all the fucking Bitcoin. So who knows how much was lost
and
there.
He was managing it for other people.
Yeah. So the amount of Bitcoin lost there is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And apparently, like, people were like, it's got to be a conspiracy, but none of it's ever moved.
If there were ever a time to prove the fallacy of mediums and talking to the dead,
Yeah, we gotta do a seance to
There's
talk to that
literally-
fucker.
Yeah, prove that.
But
Houdini, help us find the Bitcoin passkey.
but yeah, El Salvador. I mean, the renaissance that's going on there is
Yeah.
unreal. If you look at countries like Singapore, do you know the name of the guy who ran Singapore? The president,
Well, it was Lee Yuan Q at one point.
Lee
wasn't it?
Yuan Q. He was the
Of course,
guy.
you would know that off the top of your head.
I knew he would. That's why I asked
Dude.
him.
Like he struggles when he's like, I can't remember that guy's. I'm like, you've only listed out 25 guys tonight off the top of your head.
I knew he would know. I knew he would know. But when Lee Yuan Q, he came into power in Singapore, it was a dirt poor country. But what he did was he opened it up to Western capital. He freed the markets, and he let them all in, and instituted some rules. But he allowed their freedom to invest in their country. And for what happened was an economic miracle that they went from dirt poor to one of the richest countries. I think at one point they were the richest country per capita in Singapore in the entire world.
Yeah.
And they're still among the richest just from his work among decades of opening up the country,
Mhm.
appealing to capital, come in, do business here. We're not going to fuck with you. Now, if you are socially degenerate, we're going to cane the shit out of you.
Well, there's that.
But at the same, it works. Economic liberty is
Yeah.
what's important, and it's the same way in El Salvador. They have extreme economic liberty. I was talking to one of the people who owns a lot of properties there, and we're like, what's the property taxes in this area? It's like one parcel of land, $300.
Wow.
$300 property taxes.
Wow.
So once the capital comes in, and once the people realize, no, this area isn't. It's not just not unsafe. It's one of the safest places in the world because El Presidente doesn't tolerate any bullshit.
Right.
Once people realize that, what's going to happen to the country? It's going to be another economic miracle. And when you go on goodlifeelsalvador.com and you look at the sort of property you can get, which is either beachfront or right by the beach, for $100,000, less than $100,000. The amount of the apartment complexes you could put up, the Airbnbs you could put up. It's just going to be such a windfall of money coming in for anyone who wants to get involved, anyone who wants to invest, anyone who wants to go and see it. I'll recommend going and see it because you look at our country, it's so decayed. It's so, you get people who are so, high on the hog and don't appreciate any of the blessings that we do have.
Yeah.
You go to this place, the optimism among the people, the capital that's just starting to pour in.
They're coming directly out of an oppressive culture.
They're coming out of being in one of the worst situations in the world.
Yeah.
To perhaps being in one of the best. And
when you say the worst, people don't realize this. They were one of the most dangerous country, if not the dangerous country in the world at one point,
probably
just
for
a few years ago.
Probably for like 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
5 most dangerous countries in the world. El Salvador was number 1 or in that top 5.
In that top 5. And it would translate depending on how many people were being murdered at any given point. We got to talk about this because I've got some investors, and if we can put some things together, it'd be awesome.
Let's do it. Do it.
Larry decided to send us some stuff in chat because he left the show, but he's still here. The Dems are intending to pass this week in the national in Michigan legislation, 4156 national popular vote. 4410 driver's license for illegals. Oh, that's wonderful. 50. It's just his thread. It's just his thread. 5300 non-gender license. You get an X on there instead of a male or female. Well, let's do that. Along with that disgusting thing, we're going to do 4431. We're going to legalize sodomy because that.
Why not?
Because they've never prosecuted it, in 100 years. So why don't we do that? 4556 release 20-year criminals. So if they've been in for 20 years, no matter what, you just get kicked out. They're going to double malpractice insurance, right? Because I don't know what that means. Double the cost of it or double the payouts. must be the cost. $49.07 Hollywood film credits. Now that is one thing that I'm for in this list. When we had Hollywood credits back in before Schneider came in, we had a booming Hollywood economy, which trickles down and benefits a lot of people. You get food trucks, you get all sorts of services going on, all sorts of things. We were filming multiple TV series here throughout Michigan, Battle Creek, Detroit, a whole bunch of places. We were doing, they filmed part of the Superman, whatever it was, the Justice League, the funeral for Superman was in Pontiac. You know, Pontiac could use money from the film industry. Now we got to up the morality of the movies in the film industry, but the reality is the Hollywood credits. And then Snyder came in, the big businessman that he was, the snake in the grass, and abolished that. And look where it went. It went to Atlanta, it went to Louisiana, and it went to Vancouver. That's where, you know,
we got to go home tonight, so we'll save that one for the next time.
Yeah,
We'll save that one.
You had one more. Anyways, mandatory parking pass. I don't know what that means. Double marriage license fees, of course, because they made marriage illegal and then give you a license to break the law. 6 additional weeks of IUIA. Is that unemployed leave? So if we have somebody like Buttigieg who knocks up his boyfriend, then they get to take extra time off from work to what would they have that harness on with the fake boobs to
I don't know the name of it, but I know what you're talking about.
Dennis is over here. $500 license to sell nicotine. Oh, okay. So we're gonna
more impositions on small businesses.
Free water for cities. What does that mean? That you don't pay for the water? You know, if you're on city water,
you don't got to pay your water bill.
So if you're on city water, there needs to be a solid infrastructure. You know how you could save better on water? Get rid of fluoride. It's a toxic chemical. Middle class free housing. I don't know what that means. And of course, they're trying to ban vape flavors again, which Whitmer tried to do before. I'll tell you what.
Bullshit.
If you are if
you're a vapeaholic, send a middle finger to Whitmer. Call those numbers and tell them how you're pissed and want all these bills to go down.
And you're a smoker and want to. I tell you what, that I've watched multiple people that are on nasty cigarettes with a whole bunch of chemicals in them that'll just destroy you. Switch to vaping, which if you do the right vaping, it's literally vape. It's literally a water vapor with a flavor and a little
way better.
Nicotine in its purest form is actually a phenomenal, healthy product for you in its pure form when it's unadulterated by a whole bunch of chemicals to keep you addicted. So there's that. What was the final thing you guys wanted to?
Nicotine's based.
Was it a quick thing that you guys wanted to touch on?
I think you wanted to talk about how the Articles of Confederation are based.
Yes, they're very based.
Well, that's another.
They are based.
Yeah, they are based. But yeah, that takes several hours. And No, but
final thought, sir.
Okay, a final thought. Okay, well, a final thought is we are now. This is the second Sunday in Advent, and so I think that's critically important because we have so many gifts from the Creator, salvation through grace, life, and our liberty. All those things are granted by God.
Amen.
And so, this being the second Sunday in Advent, I just want to say that we have no king but Christ, and I'm thankful for everything that we're given by the Lord, and I believe in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior.
Amen. Sign that paper.
And I apologize, Dennis. You asked us what our custom was here about praying for food.
Oh,
do we speak a blessing over the food? And we said no. We generally do it after everybody's had a bite to eat because it says that while they were eating, Christ took the bread and broke it and gave thanks. And so I took the contrary to all of my church upbringing, I started to adopt the policy or the philosophy of waiting till everybody had a bite to eat, and then
got to warn me when they're signing,
and then speaking a blessing.
Sorry,
that's fine. And so then I didn't do it after everybody was having a really good meal tonight.
Everyone was shoving their faces so full of food. Whoopsie daisy.
And that was good stuff, huh? That was a rotisserie chicken from our neighbor John. Did a great honey garlic rub and injection on that. That turned out phenomenal. We had the souffle, the sweet potato souffle.
That was
Delicious.
There was some little red potatoes. There was some
Somebody brought a cheese.
sauteed peppers, yeah, and then the mushrooms, and then you brought the cheesecake. I'm the only one that hasn't had it because I was drinking enough sweet stuff and doing things that I didn't take a bite because my teeth will be on edge. But that was phenomenal. Shane, your final thought?
Final thought is Mike Rogers. He lost by a small amount of votes. I've been blamed personally
It is your fault.
It's a badge of honor.
for causing Mike Rogers to lose, and I have to say I have to come clean tonight. I did it. The blood is on my hands. I did it.
You did not realize how much of a mover and
I
shaker
did
you were.
not realize how powerful I was, but now that I have the power, now that
Watch
I feel the power,
If you try to
I
put
like
up
it.
another one, I will
like it.
knock them down as well.
I like it. So if anyone that shitty or even close to that shitty gets on a ballot again,
Yeah.
I'll do it again. I'll destroy them. I'll ruin them. Game over. It's
You
never happening
are
again.
just
So everyone who's
That's so
watching right
great.
now, whether you're a consultant, an activist, a rhino,
You've been
an
warned.
idiot, you are on notice right
Oh.
now that no candidate like Mike Rogers will ever win in Michigan again.
Uh-huh.
And me and my army of crazy libertarian Tea Party type people are going to be activated, and we will stop you.
They will
Trails
be-
troopers.
Yeah,
They will be Trejo'd.
they will be Trejo'd. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Shane Trejo, Grand New Party Pack.
GNPpack.com.
Dennis, do you have any? I know you do financial services. That's why you abstained from the Bitcoin discussion. Anything that you want to promote, any way that people can reach you? You're an awesome historian. I love it when you come on the show and we bounce back and forth because a lot of people they don't dive into this stuff. They don't. I want to sit and have a conversation with you again about this articles of confederation, but also I want to dive into. I was at a commissioners meeting and I brought up the Suffolk resolves.
Yes.
And
You said it right.
They had no clue, and I'm like, guys, this is the precursor to everything. And there was stuff just before that, but these were the penultimate or the part of the pinnacle before we got to the Declaration of Independence, and they were still, and then the dynamics of still working towards the olive branch and doing things and saying, look, we want to stay, here.
We got to do like a history hour, history debate monthly podcast or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, there's actually a civics series we could do.
That
Ooh,
sounds
that sounds
sweet.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the civics
we could bring we could
they
have
don't
deep
teach in
dive
schools.
discussions or bring on people who disagree and
Well, I
have
think we
them
put that
debate.
behind a paywall.
Oh, I don't want
Yeah.
them to agree, or I don't want them to disagree with me. I'm gonna shut the hell up and back up what I'm saying.
Well,
No, I-
actually, there's a point though. You could look at it and say the bad stuff has been promoted so much. We need to focus on. Okay, here's what it really is, and
right.
and and not
Well,
have,
bring on a token idiot to just beat him down with our opinion repeatedly. How about that?
Well, and here's a huge dynamic of this. For those out there in the show, listen, I'm not 100% well versed on all this stuff. Tim looked up some stuff. We looked up stuff while we're talking about it. I'm like, and I said to you multiple times, I'm like, correct me if I'm wrong. And we checked it out. That's you can have a good grasp or even a great grasp of history, but then still verify things. You can still look up things, and you're growing in your understanding of this, but you have a fundamental base of knowing what's at the core of it and knowing where the foundation of our country, the foundation of who we are as individuals here, as well as the collective, the people,
So I looked up for the movie Life with Father. I recommend it to everyone.
Yeah.
And it's family friendly, so you can. I mean, it's got some good humor.
No
in there.
cussing like Shane's on it.
Right.
Okay.
My wife likes this. It is quite a good movie. But so William Powell is his father,
Okay.
and Irene Dunn is the mother,
Yeah.
Okay.
and it's based and the Day family, no relation to Ryan from Columbus, but so it's Clarence Day who was a Wall Street stock trader.
Okay.
And essayist, and he wrote his autobiography, and this was the genesis of this movie.
Okay.
And I highly recommend it. And I found the part about tariffs quite interesting, both because it was about tariff. They just had that in there. You're going, really? So somebody really wanted to get that in there, but it's quite well done. And
Highly recommended movie.
Awesome. What is it called again?
Life with Father.
Life with Father. Encourage you guys out there to look it up. I have not seen it yet, but I will check it out just because Dennis recommended. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being a part of the show. Thanks, Larry, for your final chime in. You got your last word in, Larry. It was your final thought on these bills, but I do like the Hollywood film credit bills. I think they need to bring that back. It would reinvigorate the state, and but then we got to get rid of the current administration, current governor, and move on. What?
Well, that'll be our next discussion.
Yeah, that'll take a while. Yeah. But Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Is there more in the bill that I don't know about?
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
There it is. Tim's got it up on there. Life with Father. Our screen died over here. Look up behind you.
Oh yeah, there you go.
There it is. So there we go. All right. Thank you so much. I hope everybody likes, share, and subscribe. There's send it over to Tim. And
this is my brain.
Dad, that's an egg.
Yeah, that's an egg.
Honey,
Dude,
that's an egg.
seriously,
That's an egg. It's a metaphor.
It's still an egg.
That's an egg.
I would challenge you.
That's an egg.
I know my brain is not actually an egg, okay? It's a metaphor.
Metaphor or not, that's not your brain.
It's just an egg.
Una cerveza para mí. My egg is my brain.
Can I at least have some bacon, maybe some sausage with that egg, though?
Oh, I want some bacon.
I want crepes.
Have some bacon and pancakes with that egg.
I'll take it with cheese.
Extra large brown cage-free eggs.
Can I have your brain with cakes?
So sausage and a little toast and potatoes.
That would be great.
Does it have antibiotics?
I don't know, man. I'm not good at this shit.
Well, you got to be able to resist some diseases.
you resist the disease.
Does it got any hormones?
Maybe. It's cage free.
Vegetarian?
Maybe.
Are they vegan?
No, I eat steak.
Never apologize and never explain.
Never apologize.
Never apologize and never explain.